You got it.
Good morning, everyone. Appreciate everybody being here at our April 16th special call fiscal court meeting. Just as a reminder, when we have a special call meeting, we can only discuss what's on the agenda. We do have one thing that we added to the agenda, and which is why we ended up doing a special call meeting versus a work session on the post-CSEP task force topic, was because we have a bridge that's not in very good shape at Doyle'sville, and we were able to get some funding through emergency money to be able to replace that bridge. And so I'm going to read the resolution. We'll approve it first.
We'll call the roll first.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting there. And then we'll go through the rest of the meeting. So at this time, Kenny, if you will, please call the roll.
Master Combs?
Here.
Master Lockmiller?
Here.
Master Hughes?
Here.
Master Botkin?
Present.
Judge Taylor?
Here. Resolution 2024-33, a resolution approving emergency funding for the Doyle'sville Road Bridge replacement in the amount of $100,000. Whereas it would be to the benefit of the traveling public to replace the bridge on Doyle'sville Road, CR 1044, and the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet Department of Rural Municipal Aid has agreed to provide emergency funding to the Madison Fiscal Court, project number 17958. And whereas the Transportation Cabinet shall be responsible for providing and agrees to reimburse the county up to the amount of 80% of the actual project cost, the county shall be responsible for 20% of the cost, as well as any amount over $100,000. And whereas 50% of that amount, $50,000, will be processed immediately and sent via check. Once the project is completed, the remaining balance of $50,000 will then be processed and sent via a second check. However, the final payment will be adjusted as necessary if the total project cost is less than the amount from which the approval was calculated. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Madison Fiscal Court does hereby approve this resolution and authorizes the judge executive and or his designee to execute the same on behalf of the county. I need a motion and a second to approve resolution 2024-33, please.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just know, that the state came down and inspected that bridge and said it was unsafe, and it's been a very big inconvenience for the folks on the other side of the bridge. School buses can't drive across it, and it's a pretty bad situation, so it needs to be taken care of pretty quick, and I appreciate Scott getting on it and getting this thing moving.
Yeah, we had to lower the tonnage. That bridge was done in 1961. Was the year that bridge was put in, so it's had a pretty good life. So I'd say it's time to get it replaced. Timeline for your all's knowledge, probably be done and put back together and everything by the end of May. So is the kind of the timeline we're on. And we think we'll get the beams in about a month or so, and then about 3 weeks to do it all.
It's anything like what they did out in my district. They do a good job and they do it quick.
Yeah.
I think they'd be driving across the creek a little bit in the short run, so.
Yeah, they'll have to for a little bit. Yeah. So, all right. Any other comments, questions? All right. We do have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Master Combs?
Yes.
Master Lockmiller?
Yes.
Master Hughes?
Yes.
Master Botkin?
Yes.
Judge Taylor?
Yes. Kenny, you want to go ahead and sign that?
Excuse me.
All right, next is just an open discussion about the post-CSEP task force recommendation. As you all well know, I'm sure you know that the city of Berea and the city of Richmond both passed resolutions after we had our joint government meeting to support the county in moving forward and proceeding with our ordinance. And so what I need, what I think our staff needs, is some direction of the way that the fiscal court will want to go with this. And today is just really some open discussion. Brian reached out to me last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess now, about us doing a little work session, special call meeting to discuss it. We asked some, for you all masters to send in some questions that you might have, just to be able to let us be prepared of what kind of information that we might need to have for you all. We also had citizens comments that have reached out to us. Now, obviously, I don't have any comments from people that reached out to you all, but I have a list of some questions that those folks maybe have, or some recommendations, or some questions, concerns, so on and so forth. We do have Wendy and Chris and Chief here, which was part of our task force team, to be able to answer any kind of questions and just share ideas. I mean, it's a brainstorm session, so I'm going to open it up to you all for discussions, questions that you all have, comments that you all want to make.
I've had 0 calls.
I think it'd be good if, looking at the cost of the system, to kind of explain the complexity of it and why the price tag is so high. One of the questions that I have is where is the technology going for 911 in the future? Is there anything out there that's in the pipeline to replace a system like what we have? Because I'm ignorant of the system. So, I guess maybe Chris, why is this system so expensive?
So there's two major components to this. There's radio, and then there's PSAP. So PSAP is the public safety answering point. That's where they actually receive the 911 call, and they interface with the call, get latch long, and all that stuff, phase 2 compliance, yada, 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 right? That's about a $500,000 system. CSEP half that cost with us 2 years ago, Wendy? And paid for half of that since they're a 24-hour warning point, plus they're a good partner. They paid for half of that. So that's a 5-year system there. So in 5 years, you're going to have to do something again. So you're talking another $500,000. The radio system, as you know, was just replaced this year, brought online last month. That system, just for knowledge, was optimized for a post-CSEP world. Things were bought, decisions were made right about equipment that's put in to last us 15 years to get through the cycle. A core in that system that has to be replaced about every 6 years is about $700,000, and we have 2 of them. That's why you see a price tag. The other part of that is software maintenance and the physical maintenance of the equipment. So we've got to pay AMK via Harris, or through Harris software. And they just changed the way they bill all that out, and guess what that means for us? Price goes up. We've got preliminary maintenance contract with them. We've not signed anything because that system's new. Fortunately for us, when we signed that agreement, all the mobiles and the portables that are in that system are maintained for 5 years under that agreement that CSEP paid for. So if we have any issue with a portable or a mobile for 5 years, it's covered, at least the hardware is. The system itself is under a 3-year warranty. So you're going to see cost in year 1, year 2, and year 3 are much less than we get to year 4. When we get to year 4, we're talking $700,000. Some years it's over $1 million, based on what needs to be replaced. Now there's a strategy there, and the judge and I've had this conversation a couple times. Does the county take the risk and put money aside for when those components break or need to be replaced, or do you pay an AMK in advance and lock those prices in, and AMK takes the risk? But you're paying that money out regardless if something happens, right? That's the model that Georgetown Scott County took, was the full 15-year maintenance on the system. Doesn't matter what happens up there, AMK is the Harris partner, is going to replace it. Air conditioner, generator, battery, antennas, combiners, whatever it may be that's in that system, they're going to cover it, no questions asked, right? That costs a pretty penny. And the number that we're looking at does cover that entire scope of that as well. The judge and I've talked about potentially maybe the county absorbs that risk. We don't pay all that money outright. We set it aside so that when we get into a position where something's broke, we can dip down into those funds. So the complexity of it really does drive the cost. When you get to year 15 after that maintenance agreement, that's when you're looking at a new one. So when you get to year 15, that's when the last set of refreshes are going to come on the existing system today. And starting in year 15, 16, we're going to be looking at doing what we just did for the last 3 years, which is basically refreshing it. I don't believe in a post-CSEP era you will completely gut an entire radio system like we've done, because they really truly are supposed to be 20-year systems, 20 to 25 years. So what CSEP did is really out of the norm in this condition. But we took advantage of it and got that replacement right here at the end of CSEP on their dime with a 5-year maintenance on the portables and mobiles and 3 years on that system. So that's why you see that $675,000 put away in capital expenditures. That was one of Billy Ray's questions. We took that number and multiplied it into an interest calculator. If you're putting that much away at 3% in interest every year, you're going to bank somewhere between $13 and $14 million over that 15 years, which will be sufficient to refresh that whole system again. Now, there are some caveats. We get a tower that blows down in a storm. You get one that gets twisted because something is improperly attached to it, right? Or the load is not calculated correctly. And we get 15 years down the road, we gotta replace a tower. Well, now we're talking about a whole new ball of wax, right? Your question about technology, is it gonna change in the radio world? Absolutely, in the next 15 years. It's gonna look different than it does today. We don't know what those costs are gonna be. The cost that we're basically running up against today has a 3% on top of it.
Yeah.
So what we'll do, that way, today's cost has a 3% increase on top of it, so that we feel like we can get there. I hope that answers kind of what you're looking for. Now, the PSAP part of it, you're seeing a lot of PSAP centers move regionally. Madison is probably fit to be a regional partner for some of these smaller counties, the Estels, the Jacksons. Wendy, stop me when I get out of my lane here, because you know it way better than I do. Lexington right now is a regional 911 center, right? They serve all those other counties, and then people pay into it. What is our bill? $60,000 for 911 lines just alone?
For 911 lines alone.
Just for 911
Yeah.
lines alone. So
And when he
that's-
says regional, he doesn't mean they're dispatching technically for all those counties. They're sharing a PSAP piece of equipment, and everybody is able to use it. And Lexington hosts it just like something that we would have the option, and then everybody would pay into that. So it's just long term, it's just very, very smart to do. And a lot of them are starting to do that with their CAD systems also. Also allows you to share data and then roll over to those other counties if you have issues, if you're regionalizing with them, and it cuts your cost extremely, extremely down.
That's another question that I had too, is, when some of the stuff that we're, like hosting the cloud, is this a system that we can do that same thing? Can we sell this system to others to utilize it?
The 911 PSAP system, absolutely, you can become a host for, you can do it either two ways. You could become the dispatching center for Estill County if they can't afford the people and they want to pay a monthly fee, or you could just be the equipment, right, which is what we do in the KCGC. I'm just the data center for those folks, and they still have people to do their work. So either one of those are an option. We didn't join that Lexington system because it's ran off of what's called the Windstream KPI. KPN is the right term. And because we're an AT&T CLEC, or LEC, you can't get the Windstream line in here to deliver the 911 calls. So we can't be part of Lexington's regional system. And we probably don't want to be, honestly. That's probably not a great move for us. We would be better off hosting the Jacksons and the Estels and the Rock Castles of the world. That's a potential revenue. As for the radio system, that's what the BRRN agreement is that was put in place with Scott County, Georgetown, and University of Kentucky. It's to share those core resources that cost $600,000 a piece. Harris will tell you that they can run an entire state on 1 or 2 cores. We've got 6 within 3 counties, which is just silly when you think about it, just on our own scope. But the problem is nobody would go put 1 in, right? You gotta have 2. So in a BRRN world, once everything kind of flushes out, you'll see that reduction of cores, and hopefully the preliminary conversations we're having with AMK is that the agreements are signed in Scott County, University of Kentucky, and Madison County, there's a 20% reduction of the yearly maintenance for each one of those partners. That does a lot of things. It reduces the redundancy of all the equipment that everybody's buying. You don't have to have as many spares, right, because you have 1 pool of spares. And probably the most important part of it is it gives you all the interoperability that you want, right? You can create interoperability through expensive systems or putting radios in or whatever, but basically, if the BRRN finishes like it's started, you'll be able to drive all the way from the northern part of Rockcastle all the way up 75 through Fayette County, through Scott County, and almost into Grant County, and still have radio coverage back to home base without flipping that radio, right? Right now, if you want to do those things in shares, it's fingertip roaming. You got to get on there and switch it around, right? That's great for ambulances, because right now we have a huge issue with ambulances that come through there and trying to get into Lexington and all those things. Present an issue for them, so this helps with that. So regionalization, I think, is somewhere that you have to look at. We obviously do this on all kinds of fronts, and 911 should be no different, and really the radios as well.
The problem with that is, though, that I see is that that's down the road.
Absolutely.
that I don't think that you can build the structure of what's been recommended to us from the task force. I don't think you can model this around a revenue stream and whether you're gonna be able to get communities to buy on or not. You know, we several years ago, you know, we had Zoom meetings with other counties explaining what our concept was. Laurel, I mean, I can't remember how many.
Lots of, yeah.
Woodford, kind of several counties just to get them to kind of plant a seed of, hey, we have this opportunity. And, you know, again, it's hard to understand. And I don't know that, I think in time, people will understand it, right? And so I think at that point, then if you start getting some revenue streams coming in, then at that point you can reduce, right, that fee.
And I think the regionalism aspect, like I said, the costs are gonna go up as we move forward, right, and it's reflected in that budget. If you can start to regionalize, maybe you could hedge the cost off, right, and maintain it instead of having to increase the fee or whatever it may be. You start to regionalize and bring them down. We won't be in a position today or tomorrow or the next year, probably not even 2 years. We've been talking about the BRN since 2020. We still, it's not really in place, but it was waiting on us to get our new upgrades too. So it's just now to a point where it can actually kind of take place. But the system that's put in today was optimized post C7. There's been some talk of why didn't you reduce towers or why didn't you put in less equipment, or the way it is.
Can't do that on 800.
Yeah, you can't do it. The way the system is optimized to the correct sizing for what we do. So there is no opportunity to say, well, you don't need this tower, and you don't need that tower, and you don't need this, that, or the other, right? What we did do, and the term Cadillac keeps coming up. The Cadillac system that's not true. We had the Cadillac maintenance. We had a body sitting in the EOC for 8.5 hours a day that we're paying for at our beck and call, basically, for anything we come up with. We've used it for all kinds of stuff. That was the Cadillac. When you hear people say Cadillac, it's not really the infrastructure of the system or that kind of stuff. That's the maintenance of the system. We had the Cadillac maintenance. We had a body, a person, everything was prepaid for. It was all taken care of. In a post-CSEP world, that's already been, this new contract we will sign will not have that 24, or it's not 24, that will not have that 8-hour employee dedicated to us every day. So that was the biggest reduction of that cost, just in general. When it comes to the mobiles and the portables, all of our entities were given the opportunity to choose which radio they wanted. They wanted a 95, an 85, or 185P, or a, gosh, I can't remember all the numbers at this point.
95.
Yeah, the cities, or these agencies, chose which radio they wanted to get. Now, we paid for them. CSEP paid for that radio. In a post-CSEP world, you may not see Richmond with a 185P, right? Because that bad boy's $5,000-$6,000 a piece. They may end up with a Kenwood. They may end up with some other brand, or maybe Chief went ahead and kind of took the lick to begin with. His department got the 95, which is the cheapest of the. It's not a cheap radio. It was the cheapest one we offered.
It had the same capabilities, except it used a lot of the equipment that we use already. The same batteries that we have on the old system, the same antennas go on this new radio. To me, it was more economical. So we used it in fire, road, all the volunteer departments. We all got the same one.
But all that is not, it's not part of this. That's gonna be on each agency, right? Whether the fiscal court's paying it, the city of Richmond's paying it, or the Bria's paying it.
That's their choice.
It's their choice. It's Eastern. I mean, the school system, whoever has radio, correct?
Yep.
That entity or that agency will be paying that cost. It has nothing to do with this 911 fee. It is specific in law what you can spend this 911 fee on, and the handhelds, the mobiles, all that stuff is not included in that.
Just infrastructure. So
Yeah.
one other thing we did do the infrastructure is we have, you probably know better, we had 10 channels today or before.
Mm-hmm.
We dropped that to 8. But when you go to a phase 2 system, you actually double that number. So now you got 16 channels. So we did reduce that because that's equipment you got to buy, that's equipment you got to maintenance. It does raise the cost. That was another aspect that they did drop down. The other thing that they did was the NOAA system had its own radio system, basically set off all of that kind of stuff, and the radio system. that, or not the radio, the alert warning towers, that's all been pulled onto the 800 megahertz. So that's, again, one more cost that we're not duplicating, running into. So there were things that were done to the system infrastructure-wise to reduce the cost, to make sure that in a post-CSEP world, just like with the siren, outdoor siren, there were 96 to start with. The county took that initiative when they started looking at that. How do we reduce that cost in a post-CSEP world? And there's some plans to maybe, I think we had it on there, remove some of those, right, which caused CSEP a little heartburn. I thought we were gonna take them all out. We would only take out ones where zones have 2 or 3 because CSEP required them to be redundant, and some other things that you don't necessarily need in an ordinary thing. So I guess the takeaway from that is the infrastructure for radio system has been optimized for a post-CSEP world. The contract for the maintenance will reduce because of it, but this number is reflective of what the budgetary number we've seen from AMK that'll cost us to maintenance the system. And I can pull that up later. You'll see it fluctuates year over year. Our thought is to get that into, what is it over the 15, divide that by 15, make a steady payment every year. So we know budgetary wise how to kind of keep that going. So that's the technology standpoint when it comes to that.
Is there cost associated with the number of users that, other than not counting the radio, but just the amount?
Channels?
Yeah.
So the more people you put on the radio system, the more channels you would have to have. We've already reduced it by 2, but we doubled up by going to phase 2 compliance, which gets us 16. We've never busied the system, and to my knowledge, the old system, and we'll probably never. Now, you can nickel and dime it and drop another 2 or 3 for some reason, but you're talking $10,000. Like at some point, that doesn't. No. So the number of people that are utilizing the system is not going to change the infrastructure at this point. So if EKU falls off and the schools fall off and you lose 1,500 users, it doesn't change the infrastructure. And I know there was like some discussion about what that total fee looked like, and I will zoom this in. These are all the things you gotta take into consideration when we talk about radio operation. You got utilities, inspections, generator maintenance, the contract itself.
Stop right there. That's 700,000.
Yep.
I mean, I ain't worried about them little $50,000. That's 700,000. What is that?
That
That's
is the
big.
maintenance, that's the maintenance of the infrastructure and all the software of just the radio system itself.
700,000 a year.
CSEP is paying that today.
They've been paying that,
They've actually been paying more than that.
They've been paying more than that.
but I look on their budget, the CSEP budget, I don't see that on their budget. I don't know where that came from. I mean, I never had seen that line on previous budgets.
What is it?
It is,
The radio maintenance budget.
it's actually line 489, I think.
You talking about CSEP?
Yep.
Yeah.
Where we tie that cost in currently. We just paid $57,000 a month for maintenance. of the old
What'd you say
system.
it is, 489?
It's like dash 489. It's about halfway through.
I mean, we had them 2 big numbers, 675,000. I understand that's.
Yeah, it's 5,800,000 megahertz replacement.
Nope.
All right, what's the line item though? I mean,
So
what's
we just paid.
what's the line item name?
$58,000 a month for the last year. So that's $685,000.
Radio tower maintenance.
Service contract.
To AMK
Service.
for maintenance of the existing.
711,000.
And CSEP has been paying for all of
970.
these things, right? Now, this is the maintenance, and this $700,000 includes the refresh. So if
So,
the miner
includes
goes
the what?
back, includes refresh. So year 6 is a core that has to be replaced in the system, right? Just through regular life cycle replacement. That $700,000 includes replacing that at no additional cost to us. Now, the county could say, hey, I want to take the risk, right? And I'm going to not pay them $700,000 a year, and I'm going to put that, whatever the number you come up with, away in our capital sinking fund. So when year 6 gets here, I've got a pool of money to pay for that $700,000 core, $600,000 core, whatever it may be, right? This assumes the $700,000 is worst case. That's paying for everything to be taken care of, no additional cost will come up on you, right? Something happens on a tower, or some piece of equipment fails, they're coming in and replacing it after year 3 at no cost. So that's worst case. So we've already had some discussions about that. The $675,000 is assuming you need $13 million in 15 years to completely replace it again. And that's assuming $675,000 per year at a 3% interest rate on top of each other, gets you somewhere around $13, $14 million. So So that's why that's in there. Now, these would be any capitalized cycle. So when we talked about PSAP, it's being about $500,000. When we get to that area again, when PSAP has to be refreshed, we would use that money to refresh it. We're not gonna come back to you and say, hey,
Which one's he on?
I need you to pony up 500,000. You can zoom that in.
And the same for the facility, because right now, all the years that 911 has been housed, we've never paid anything. We don't have it. CSEP is always, and even our consoles, and that's a big part in with
That's
it being
probably
able
what
to
we're
do
already
that,
paying.
like figuring those costs in, like mobiles and portables, like the consoles that we set out are about $30,000 a piece, and CSEP paid for those, and that's just the basic console, that's not the equipment sitting on it, so, and all of that gets figured into that.
Well, this should be something.
refresh cost.
How much on the cores is?
The core,
Yeah, to replace one of those cores.
What's the other
the core
question?
itself is about, I think they
Tire
charge
inspection.
$650,000. And we've got 6 of them within 3 counties. Which is why the BRRM is important to reduce those. You don't have all those, we each would have one, and they're all redundant to each other, so you go from 6 to 3. It's helping regionally everybody, right? Trying to keep that.
Well, I don't know that you can sit here and perceive that that's the way it's gonna be in the future. I don't think that's the way it's gonna be. So, a couple questions, Chris, is tire inspections.
Yep.
So Dean says he charges $1,500 to do tire inspections.
No, that's not correct. Like, and I don't know if I can legally say what I charge, but it's 1/3 of that cost. Huh?
It's open record.
It is open record. So I think my last bill let's just say $9,000. I've done them for the last 6 years. Why do we have 30,000 on there? I do know AMK
But
bids
there's
on
9 towers.
9 towers, and all 9 towers is what I charged to do tire inspections. That was my fee.
So my $1,500 assessment of that is correct. You said it
You
wasn't correct?
$1,500 a tower?
Yeah. I mean, if you have 9 towers, $1,000, $9,000
Yeah,
a year.
it's right.
You know,
9,000.
1,500 would be 13,500. 1,500 a tower would be 13,500 a year. You said it's a
Okay.
third, right?
It's a third of that 30,000 is what I'm
So
saying.
that would be a
I don't think
third.
$15,000 knocking at our $4.3 million profit.
No, I'm just saying that's a padded
He's
number.
saying that's a padded number. That it inflates the number.
Because
It
I'm not
will.
coming to this body with a short number.
No, and I granted, and I'm not against any of this. I'm just saying
I'm not saying you are, I just.
I'm
It has
not
to be
against
padded.
any of the buddy. I'm just saying it, and it is padded. But I do know what AMK. I know what they turned in on bid every year for it, and theirs was like 15,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay, I've just been doing it cheaper. 30,000 is, and it's fine to pad stuff. I'm just saying, I think some of these numbers are a lot, and I was always wondering, why does this not have to go out? Because now it's out of CSEP's hands. Why do we not put this out for bid?
You absolutely will.
I'm saying like AMK stuff. That's a lot of money, 700,000.
For the maintenance contract, you can't because Harris, the only authorized Harris dealer in Kentucky is AMK.
Okay, we can't. Okay.
I'm not gonna sit here and die on that sword, right?
No,
But
I
that's
mean, I know
okay.
there's other Harris dealers in Kentucky, so.
They're the only authorized one. We have a
Yeah.
letter that says that that's it, so. Now, if that's not different, if that's different, then absolutely.
Now, under 40,000 doing a tire inspection, you just have to get 3 bids. We know that, and that's
Well, we're
fine.
gonna do it anyways. Yeah, every time.
Yeah.
We're gonna be prudent and do 3.
Yeah, but we're sitting here talking about, we're thinking that what's gone on with CSEP in the past is the
Yeah.
way, we're speculating that that's what's gonna go on in the future. And I don't think that that's part of this.
And this one honestly is
And I
probably the
can't,
one I
I'm
don't
gonna sit
have.
here and say that if one is inflated, we can't sit here and say that because that one's inflated, then all of them are inflated.
No, we can't. And like I said, I'm not against any of this. I just think that we just need to look at each one. It's just, that is a lot of money on the maintenance contract.
And part of that is included, right? For the first 3 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, so year 1, this is actually really inflated for year 1 because year 1's only 80,000.
And I will say this, I mean, I've got a 5-year warranty on the tire lights. Labor, and y'all have got the parts to replace it right now. So, I mean, that part's covered for 5 years. You call me up if the tire light gets, something goes wrong. And for the next, what is it, Tim, 3 years probably? I think we're coming up on 2 years here soon.
If
So-
there was one that we don't have, that I don't have the number on, like that was pulled by Jesse, it's probably this one. Now, these weed and mowing and all this other stuff is
That looks
actual
good.
cost.
Yeah.
It's actual cost, so, or at least rounded up on their monthly. So these are all good. This is right out of Keiko with the charges, which we know is going up 20%, so that number is actually wrong. But all these other ones are good. Now HVAC maintenance, this is what they spent in the past. Well, heck, if they're maintenance appropriately, we may not spend any of them. What we found before is that they're not being maintenance correctly, so they're very expensive to come back and replace. We all
You got
know
a
that.
budget for it.
Right.
Did they switch
And I've done a
vendors?
bunch of budgets in the past, and the worst thing you can do is under budget.
Yeah.
If you under budget, then you gotta go back and raise taxes
Especially in
again.
the 911 system.
Absolutely.
Where you don't know,
So-
like, next month
so-
what the state's gonna mandate.
So if one is inflated a bit, that's normal budgeting.
Yeah.
You don't underestimate.
And can't tell you exactly what that, is that just that, or did they, who knows, right? And I know you're only 1,500 or so a pop, and our next even, I think,
Six of the
vertical
tires
structures-
is one price. The Bria monopoles is a smaller price.
Sure,
and,
right.
Yeah.
And
it's
we're looking
broken
for
down.
different stuff. But I mean, we don't get in the weeds on that.
No.
Are the numbers inflated? Absolutely, a little bit. They're padded.
Yeah.
This number right here for the first 3 years, which is important for a conversation as we get down the road here today. The first 3 years, if you're not paying that full cost, you're only paying for the body that we want to have here, which we think right now the appropriate body is 2 days a week. Plus some of the other things we have to pay for is only $75,000 or $80,000 a year. So as we get into a little further conversation here about when we place the fee, that's going to be important to know is that this $700,000 was put in there for budgetary purposes because we don't want people to be confused or misunderstand why that's like that. So it's just included in there. And obviously these contract increases, I got to put in an increase over the year to show a 5-year projection. Will it raise that much?
Hey, Chris, you know, this is a good discussion, so I'm all about the discussion. But if we were sitting here and this budget had been put together in 2018 or 2019, we'd be sitting here crying because inflation would have blown it.
We definitely would. 'Cause
And we would have had to
looked
gone
at
out,
those back
we would have to go out and raise the fee. And that's one thing we don't want to have to do in the first,
Yeah. And this
ever, if we
column-
don't have to.
This column right here indicates what I applied over the years into this. So this percentage, right, insurance is going up 3%. Again, who knows if that's what it really will be, but again, it's just your best guess at what this will look like. You're gonna learn a lot year one, how much gets collected, how much gets spent. My hope is that that fee is higher than it needs to be, and you leave it the same or you drop it a little bit, right? I know we've had lots of conversations, you don't wanna raise it.
Well, and you know, I think before I got here, you did that in the taxes. We've actually brought taxes down, right? Real estate taxes?
Yeah, real estate. hey.
So, I mean,
We tried to raise them, but nobody liked that. So then we lowered them.
I heard about that.
Then we lowered them.
But, so I mean, it is a snapshot in time. And we do have the opportunity as a physical court and an entity that has to watch out after the dollars and cents and also represent the constituents to either raise it or decrease it over time. But this is just a picture right now, and at least the way I see it is, gosh, how fortunate has Madison County been. But unfortunately, the other task on that is we're not sitting here like another county and starting from zero, but the system that we have is not junk either.
Correct.
But that's a good thing.
Yep. These are largely what you would see off of today's budget. I did take some action to kind of maybe put a few of those things together, like the salaries. These are the line items that I combined, because I think you had a question about they don't really line up. I took the salaries, which was their benefits and everything
I
combined.
can
into
get
one
them,
budget.
it's at 675,000, that's 700,000, which is big
Yep.
chunks, the rest of it, but $700,000, you know, you're going, that's a big lick, and I couldn't tie it to the,
So I
I
think
said,
you-
where'd that come from?
I think you found it. It's
It's in
under
the
radio
budget.
maintenance. It's like $711,000.
It's under what?
Radio
It's under
maintenance.
CSEP, it's a CSEP budget, it's not in the 911 budget, Bill, right?
Yeah,
That's
I know,
what-
I looked at the
Okay.
CSEP budget, the financials, and I was just not being able to correlate between that AMK, whatever the heck that is, AMK, $700,000 a year, and he's saying that's more or less an insurance policy. Big part of it is an insurance
It's
policy.
800 megahertz service contract, 711,971 is in the budget.
And that started out as a small number, and then through the CSEP years has gotten bigger through the contract built in that way to be what it is today.
Well, and I want to make sure that I understand it correctly too, because of what Bill Ray said. is it an insurance policy or is it a guaranteed
It's both.
purchase?
It's both.
Okay.
So there are things that you have to pay for, right?
Right.
That includes this cost. So this is like, it actually includes an annual tower inspections, part-time technician, HVAC and generator, support services for dispatch, and then the 9 sites, right? You can see what that portion costs. Year 1 and 2 is that, or year 1, 2, and 3, because it's under maintenance, right? Then you get to year 4 and 5, just that portion of it. Look at what it is year 10. And then you got up here, let's go back up here. Here's the layer, this is the Harris stuff that we're required to have. Here is premium tech support and the licenses that they make you have. Look at what that costs in year 4. So you'll see that the costs jump around from year to year to year, right? And they did that trying to show us what the cost of the equipment that's coming would be through those years. My personal opinion was you would total this bad boy up, divide it by the number of years, and pay a static fee. Now, the maintenance or the insurance policy part of it is where you could take the risk as the fiscal court and say, nope, we're not paying in advance for all this equipment, we'll pay it as breaks, and then you set it aside on your own and you take the risk to spend it. Now, that air conditioner may be 10,000, you only thought it was gonna be 5, you're gonna get hammered, whereas if we paid AMK 5,000 and they gotta fix it, cost them 10, they got hammered, right? It's like anything else, where are you gonna pass the risk? Who
Well,
wants the risk?
we try to take the hammering out of the equation, if at all possible, and that's why we are looking at this in order to pass a fee that hopefully will never have to go up, but more than likely it will someday.
The judge says it best, we're just trying to decide which side of the dull knife we're gonna get hit with.
Right.
Right, I mean, you're either gonna risk it, or we end up looking like fools because we didn't take it.
If y'all don't do this, you're going to end up like Anniston, Alabama. Okay, and if anybody knows, and if you haven't heard, Anniston had the same problem. They had a Cadillac radio system and didn't have the money to take care of it at the end.
Hey, just for the record, would you just state your name, so that when they do the minutes and they go back and listen to this, they know who's talking?
Oh, Dean Vinsel,
Sorry, and address, just.
1160 Middle Road, Brig, Kentucky.
Yeah.
The other big portion of this is
Sorry.
different from what
They ain't
happens
gonna know,
today.
they'll be like, who is that guy?
Talk about that Aniston again, what happened down there?
So Anniston, Alabama, which was another CSEP area, they put in a lot of sirens like we did, a lot of big radio system, Cadillac radio system, and they didn't plan on what you all are sitting here planning on today. And so there was no money to take care of that radio system. I believe it was a Motorola system, but big P25 system, and it kind of went defunct, and everybody had to go back to their own repeater systems, and it just, so it's just a bunch of junk and towers out there not being used. You have to plan for after CSEP like you're doing. I mean, this is a good thing.
If you could do me a favor,
What?
stop using the word Cadillac.
Yeah, Cadillac's really not a
Okay.
good machine.
Yeah.
So Alexis,
It paints a false perception that we put in some system that we can't afford or that we shouldn't have, and that is not the case.
It really is not the system, it was the service we
It
received
was
from
really
the
the service you
system.
received.
Yeah.
Now, a
We had-
P25 system, to most counties, they can't afford it and never will have it, right? Or their terrain doesn't. Madison County didn't have CSEP, it probably wouldn't have a P25 800 megahertz system because of the terrain, because you had to build 9 tower sites. But you're not gonna take the money the CSEP's invested to build 9 tower sites and throw it out the door, right? You're gonna take advantage of what was put here and use it going forward. One of the other important
So what's
things-
another option, Chris? I mean, talk about that. So if CSEP wasn't here and we wouldn't have had an 800 megahertz system, what is the other system?
You'd be P25 compliant, VHF or UHF.
All right, so what would that cost?
It'll be significantly less, but you won't have the same in-building coverage, which our people are now accustomed to. Our firefighters go into buildings, Dean
Estel
was a
just put one
firefighter.
in.
Still just did one.
Yeah. You're talking probably, what, Dean, less than $800,000?
yeah, so like over
$1 million.
in Garrett County, everybody knows I'm fire chief at Cartersville too. We have a P25 VHF system, 3 site, and it works really, really good. There is some dead spots, the same as Madison County has. But our system, I mean, each repeater's like 15 grand a piece, so 3 repeaters, duplexers, antennas, towers, stuff like that. I mean, you can get into it a lot cheaper than what we did here, and it works fine. But we also have a lot of spare parts and stuff like that for any failures right now over here. I mean, the CSEP's been really good to us, but it's a expensive system. I mean, what are we talking, a $25 million system, is that?
If you look, if you get right down to it, 12 million was the system, there was
Yeah.
$5 million in portables, and then a couple $1 million in Yeah.
So if by saying, hey, we're not gonna have a 800 megahertz system, then is that going backwards? Is that like,
It's very much going backwards. You would be back to the day when the officers would have to try to find a landline phone to call you from EKU to let you know what they're doing as fire department's in there trying to clear the building and the stairwell and they can't get out.
so then we have a standard system today? And for today's time then, and for what
For a
we're
community
doing,
of your
Yeah,
size,
for our size, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
we have a standard
625,
system.
800 megahertz is where you land.
10 years down the road, we might be on LTE and completely off 800.
And
So,
three other fee
Are you talking, we have a lot more industry than some of the smaller counties that don't have that. The factories and then the colleges and even the schools. A lot of the schools they couldn't even get out before, even at Central, like down in the home economic area and things like that. So they would literally, and I know because I've been here since '98, they would literally look for a phone somewhere to call dispatch to let us know their status because we couldn't get them on the radio.
So our system is
don't say Cadillac.
standard system. I'm not saying
For
Cadillac.
yeah,
Call
for
Cadillac.
for our size of community, it's
is the
it's
correct
standard.
system.
It's the correct system that
Yeah.
you would need.
And I
And all
think
these
what-
other counties that we have that are comparable to our size that have upgraded like to today's standard, they've gone with 800 megahertz system, right?
Yep,
Scott
Scott
County,
County.
Every fee
Kent-
county.
Boone, Kent, Campbell,
They're all Motorola 800.
Bullitt, Louisville. I mean,
Bowling
Yeah.
Green?
Now, the state's coming through with a statewide network that's not 800 megahertz. It's UHF, UHF.
It's UHF right now. They're talking about 800, but they'll have to build double the amount of tires to do it.
so we have a standard system. So that's today's standard. It might have been a Cadillac 20 years ago, but today it's a standard system. Is that fair to say?
I don't even know, 20 years ago it was a Cadillac.
No, we started looking at it probably back then, and
I said it wasn't a Cadillac. I don't know if I said that word. No, when CSEP put that 800 megahertz system in here, that's where it's going. You got to be 25 compliant now to get any grant money.
Yeah.
Buy radios without.
Let me ask
sending
this
them to
question.
CMRS for
The
it.
system that we have today, is it because of the industry and the things that are in this county, or is it because of the individual people, the 100,000 people that are here?
The system
Because
that's put in
here's my biggest concern, is we're asking the citizens of this county to fund the majority of this. Because if you look at this fee schedule, they're taking in about $3 million of the cost, and their commercial property is taking in about $1 million. And to me, that is totally out of whack. Because we're asking the citizens of this county to pay for a system because we have industry and we have 2 universities and we have all this other stuff here. And the citizens are taking it in the mouth.
So that's a great segue to the next.
So before we get off of this one,
Yeah.
I still got some concerns about
Sure.
the core. Can we go back to the $700,000 number?
Okay. So let's see if we can find that number again.
So you're taking it, Brian, you're saying it off of that, right? You're saying it off the residential part.
You see, like, here's $1 million this year.
Non-residential. Is that-
Here's 7.
Yeah, I got you.
Talking about on the red sheets on the.
You want budgetary, budget number? Sorry.
So
Yeah.
the $700,000 number, 80,000 of it is for maintenance and for a body, basically,
Only the body.
right? So we're looking at 625 for replacing a core, single core, right? So in the first 3 years, our core right now are in what state?
We're in
Brand new. So if they last brand new, what's the life cycle on?
6 to 7 years.
6 to 7 years, all right? So if they go 6 years, in 3 years, we're gonna have $1.8 million set aside for the replacement of one $600,000 core. Let's assume the price of it goes up, and it's $1 million, right? Is that correct? It just seems like for me, that's a high number.
I think we gotta make
For
sure.
an insurance policy,
And that, I think that's where the county makes their decisions about, do you take the risk because you don't see it, or what the pattern is maybe we don't spend that money out, we keep it aside. You gotta make sure we keep the life cycle replacement outside of the contract, because the contract is just maintenance an ongoing life cycle refresh, right? Like, I gotta come to you every 4 or 5 years and buy new computers or new switches or new gear. That's what's happening here, but I'm not coming back to you or the citizens and saying, hey, oops, now I gotta replace the 30 switches in these towers at $4,000 a piece.
Chris, Tom's example there about, $600,000 core, but don't we have two cores?
We do have 2 cores.
Two run active?
Yep. The other
So what I'm getting at, and I'm just making sure
You're right.
I'm facilitating here, really, because I'm listening to both sides. I want to make sure everybody understands. Tom's example is 1 core. Your answer to him was really 1 core, and it looks like you got this excess amount of money,
It's not true, yeah.
which you have 2 cores. So your $600,000 example, you have to say is 1.2 million, and now go back through your. I can't remember your calculation, Tom. I'm not inside your brain. I just want to make sure that, because we have 2 cores, which is 1.2 million. So now do your math that way to see if that either makes you feel worse or better.
Well, no, I was just trying to figure out if 1 core was an operation, 1 core was a backup.
They actually run in tandem.
So if they're running tandem, then one of them, for the most part, is a backup,
Yep.
right? So at
If
$600,000.
something failed on the primary, you bring that other one and
It
take
switches the
over,
other,
right? And then
right.
you would fix this one and then put them back up, which
Right.
you would have to replace them both.
At the same time.
Let me ask you this, what drives the replacement? Is it usage or is it
Age.
just the age?
Life cycle, just general life cycle replacement. You don't keep your cell phone for more than a year or 2 now these days.
So
You don't
is
keep
that a
laptops.
software issue?
Hardware, really hardware.
So
That
what
core is
can
nothing
go
more than
wrong
a
with the
server.
hardware if you're not? I mean,
That's life cycle replacement system. You can opt not to, and CSEP did opt to. Do you remember, Tim, when that was? There was a Carl was here. I hate to say that
Yeah.
word. We opted not to do the maintenance and run on that stuff, and then we ended up in a pinch. We can play those games, and we can do that kind of stuff. I wouldn't do it with a system that is providing primary communication to first responders in a life or death situation. If you're going to spend it in hardware refresh, this is
I'm just asking questions. I'm just
Oh,
trying to figure out what drives that kind of cost. 'Cause,
hardware.
I work in an industry that we're using stuff that's been obsolete for 30 years,
Yep.
and it still works just fine. But I mean, but you do run into those occasions where the next thing you buy, you can't buy that. You have to buy the newest technology,
Yeah.
So
and then
Brian,
you got to change everything you got because of
We
that.
ran into that with our people.
Brian, with that example, what would be the outcome in your example if that piece of equipment, like this 30 years obsolete or whatever, still works fine? What would be the outcome if it stopped working?
You'd be at extremely higher cost because you'd have to change everything that's associated with it.
So in that same example, all right, what would be our outcome if
You're
that
changing
happened?
equipment at every tower site, you're changing systems, you're changing all new gear. You're far better off to, I know the
Basically,
number
what-
hurts, you're far better off to keep that stuff and moving with it instead of having that big gap and like, oh man.
But
now
if
we
a
gotta
core
do
went
something.
down, if both cores went down because we were waiting for it to break, right? Because that's basically what we're saying here is the life cycle of 2 cores is 6 years.
Yep.
It keeps us from breaking down, right? I mean, that's ultimately what we're saying.
When a core dies,
What happens if we break down, we don't do that, and 10 years get by with those 2 cores and then they break? What happens?
so the core provides the brains of the operation essentially. If that core, you were to yank both cores out today and just beat them with a sledgehammer and they don't work, right? I can still talk to you, beep beep, but I can't talk to them because that core is 911. That's how you're interfaced into the systems through the core. So if the cores go down, you lose the cores. It's administration of the system. It's changing lid numbers. It's changing IDs. It's doing all that other stuff that we don't need to know about. But its primary function is to provide that communication. Now, we're fortunate enough through CSEP. The CSEP has put backup radios under every desk at $5,000-6,000 a piece, so that if that core does die, we pick up those other radios. It stinks. It's not fun. Dispatchers will hate it.
They will.
And they can just talk to them this way, right? They lose the fancy headsets, they lose all the computer gear and the patching and all that stuff. But if we're in that kind of mode, who cares, right? Like you can deal with pushy talking for a little while until something comes.
Is, under this scenario, is there has it been considered that we're going to operate moving forward, but we're not going to exactly duplicate what CSEP was able to afford going forward? So are there stuff that we understand that is actually going to be dropping off because we're trying to be efficient and good with the taxpayers' money here, and that X, Y, and Z are not going to be going forward?
Yeah,
And you don't have to be specific,
we
but I
drop
mean,
those channels, so we drop channels down.
Right.
We drop the on-site person down.
right?
We don't have the top-level maintenance program with them like we do, because we did have the Cadillac maintenance program. The most you could afford, you could buy, we were the most expensive you could buy, we're not.
The
doing
most
that.
expensive, not
Yeah,
Cadillac.
The most expensive one you can buy, we had. Things like backup radios that are in towers that come across fiber that's in the combo shelter, we would never do that. That's a CSEP thing.
So we are being
Absolutely. Yep.
conscious
And we
of our
have to.
situation
Yep.
and of the constituents, and we're also taking away things that we don't feel like are necessary moving forward
Correct.
to protect our citizens.
And in our upgrade, so, and I'll try to make this simple. If I butcher it, y'all just pick me up, make me look good, all right? But in our upgrade, we had 90 siren towers, right? Which is part of the communication with citizens, right? Through 911. We had 90 siren towers, siren poles, sirens, whatever, right? Well, in the upgrade, we reduced that down to and relocated some of those strategically to reduce it. And once post CSEP's over, I think it's going to get it down to around 65, right?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
You said you had certain areas where there might be 3 and you take it down to 1.
So we reduced the number. So that took 25, let's say. That took 25 siren poles and sirens and everything out of the equation in our upgrade to reduce our cost. So when we did all the upgrades with the whole system, we strategically did that because we wanted it less cost on us for the long
Well, it was
term.
right. It was the right thing to do for what our
So
expectations
through that
are
RFP,
going
they got
forward.
maintenance. So when it goes into maintenance, the 72 sirens is about $62,000 a year to maintenance. So when you start looking at a task force and you're thinking about, well, do I just get rid of all those sirens? Well, CSEP spent what, $4 million? About $4 million to put them in. Am I going to, as a task force, recommend to you to get rid of them over a $60,000 bill?
I mean, citizens have already complained that they don't tell us when a thunderstorm's coming.
Right. I've heard that before.
I mean,
We could turn that back on.
well, you don't want to.
You don't want to, but you could.
I mean, they're complaining it don't tell you when it's lightning outside or it's getting ready to rain. I mean, so they're definitely not going to like it if you take it out.
I don't know why anybody would complain about the weather if they have a cell phone.
Absolutely.
That just makes no
agree.
sense, because my cell phone will go off 2 minutes before the alert system goes off.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of, I gotta shut that annoying thing off, because I already know it's coming.
Yeah.
Well, I just feel good that the task force and you all have done that to show that we're being as efficient as we can, not to charge more per residence or commercial, but just to make sure that we've got an adequate supply of money moving forward to keep it up.
And I think as we move into the next topic of conversation here, as you kind of set it up, I think we can address, based on the data that we have collected since the post-CSEP task force, the justification of where the cost should fall and why it should fall where it's at. We've got the data to show it to you, and then some ideas around maybe per door or whatever fee and the caps that were set are creating an imbalance somewhere that probably needs to be addressed to accurately charge folks the correct amount.
So I feel like the conversation's getting ready to change.
I'm not ready to change yet.
Okay, sure.
Is this number right here included in the $600,000 numbers?
Yeah, that's that 800,000 for $700,000 a year. Because I think
All
you
maintenance.
I think you add this up and you divide it by 10 or 12
So
years,
that's
15.
where I'm getting twisted.
And know where
Because just
you're-
the price of the core itself does
Yeah.
not.
I don't think you would
It's
ever.
way above that.
I wouldn't want to do this if Chris Israel's IT budget to you, right? If I knew I had long costs and I already knew what they were going to be, I'm going to divide that out and pay them yearly into a maintenance cost. And that's what Georgetown does. They just took the total price of 15-year contract, divided by 15. That's how much they pay every year. Now, this has not been negotiated. I've not let Reagan sit in front of them and beat them up because he's really good at it. That price will come down. We will make decisions about things as a court that you want or don't want, right? And it will dictate this pricing. This is budgetary. It may be high, it may be low, I don't know. but we just had to have something to run with, at least providing some kind of number. So that's what we're looking at from that standpoint.
Hey, did UK and Scott County go phase 2, or are they still phase 1?
They're both phase 2.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the beef of last year. They went phase 2.
So before we switch, because I want to get into some of these questions the masters have. Bill Ray, I know you sent in something. Do you feel like you've got your questions? I think you had the question about the 700,000. Do you feel like you have your questions answered?
Oh, they've been answered.
You know, you might not like the answer, but they've been answered.
There's
Yeah.
room to negotiate. We've not negotiated. That is budgetary numbers from them. We've not ultimately decided exactly every little thing you guys want or don't want in there, and that's for you guys to decide. That number obviously can really only go down.
I come from an industry like Brian there, and we ran presses as 75 years old, and I always won because we supplied Toyota. You shut down Toyota, it's $1,000 a minute, so you got big pressure to keep parts running. And I want motors. I want backup motors. Press goes down. I want backup motors to have them just in case. And even because we were so cost conscious, we didn't have just in case inventory. We didn't have just in case motors. If it went down, it was crisis, and you had to make it happen. But we didn't have the luxury of having replacement parts sitting on the shelf just in case.
So today, CSEP does have every piece and part of this infrastructure sitting on a shelf. Every piece of it.
Yeah,
We
that's
will
government.
not-
That's the difference between government and the
we
private sector.
will not have that moving forward. There are some spare parts for small items, but there's no core sitting on a shelf. Because in my opinion, if you take a server and buy it, put it on a shelf for 10 years,
It's
it
outdated.
ain't gonna run in 10 years.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the wrong one.
Yes,
Well,
but you have the maintenance history over the past X number of years to know which one of those parts are the ones you need to keep and
Absolutely.
the ones you don't need.
Yes, we can work.
You've
with
already
that.
got that history.
Yep.
And we're also talking about private business, which I've been a part of myself, and this is not private business. This
Those
has
are people in
nowhere
emergencies.
close to being private
Yeah.
business. This is somebody getting ready to die that wants you there now.
Well, and then when you look at it, I hate to keep the topic, it's a $20,000 part. Somebody died, and then the citizens are in uproar. You didn't mean you didn't keep one of those on the shelf for $20,000? Well, we were trying to be prudent, right, and try to save your tax dollars, but now we look silly.
And I'm not trying to I'm just saying it's between life and death and or something else versus a plant shuts down for 24 hours and they fly something in from another plant or whatever. And I agree with you, Billy Ray. It's just as important when you're in that position with that plant, but I don't think it's life or
And
death.
Tim can back me up too. The way the system is designed with the ring that's multipath, it's self-healing, right? It can go from tower to tower to tower. If it has a broken link, right? It knows, oh, hey, I'm supposed to go to Big Hill, but that's broke, but I know I can go to Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
It can route itself correctly. If we lose one of these tower sites, 9 times out of 10, people don't know. They may have a little less coverage in an area that maybe they had great coverage in, but they're not going to notice it. So it's already built with itself kind of self-healing and taking care of itself. We're talking about major components like the core. If that core goes out, we're done dispatching as we know it today, right, until somebody fixes it. It could be a simple reboot. We were laughing about that, right? They got to come in and reboot it. But that's why you pay AMK to do the preventive maintenance on those. They come in, they do it every day right now. They would not do that in the future. They would do it at least once a week. They come in and walk every tower site, look at all the equipment, and do the preventive maintenance and keep that stuff for the longest period of time it can. So I just think, with that being said, this contract can be negotiated. Things can be removed to get it down to a more palatable number that everybody's comfortable with.
But so that discussing that, I mean, but right now we're saying 4.3 million. I mean, in your opinion, like what are we talking to get it down to? I mean, can we cut 300,000 off of it?
Doubtful.
So I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I think everybody here would agree that if you can cut, like you need to be able to cut something that means something, right? Cutting $20,000 or $30,000 off this thing's not. I mean, that's not going to be the difference in nothing.
No.
Brian, I know you'd sent a few questions in. Do you feel like you've been able to ask those, or that they've been
This part,
answered?
I mean, we still got to get into the residential commercial
Right.
part of it.
Yeah. All right. So, does anybody need a little recess? We've been at this an hour and a half. Does anybody need a quick recess, use the restroom? Or? All right. Well, I need one, but I'm not going. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go, but y'all keep talking.
All right, so the next topic that I guess has been coming up is the inequities between 0 and 1 and 2 and 20 and 31 and more and the 5s and the 10s and the thousands of square feet, Fred, that Brian brought up. We've kind of been going back and forth. So we finally got all of the 911 call data. There were 137,000 calls catted into the system in 2023. We went through and removed anything that fell in a public right of way, if it was a wreck in an intersection or whatever it may be, because we couldn't geocode that point to a parcel. And then anything that was kind of garbage data or out of the county, there was actually a lot of those where they get catted coming from Garrett County because they're on the line and they were showing up. So that 101,545 catted entries is what we believe is the accurate number of calls that have happened in 2023. That number is steady and increasing every year. It's not going down.
It's tied to a parcel, right?
So each one of these is a zone. So Austin GIS works for me. Went through and did a geocode. So he saw the address or the Latin law that came from the cell phone, put that on his map, and then tied it to a parcel, and then looked at the parcel to see what it was zoned. So you can see here, there's lots of letters, right? A1, AG, B1, 2, 3. Jill and Tim and I beat our heads, and Wendy
Yeah, I was
against
gonna
the
say,
wall.
make that a little bigger, please.
Trying to figure out, yeah, I'm trying to get this a little bigger here.
That's all right. I can see it now.
A1 is the county's agriculture, single-family residential. AG is the city's agriculture. So there's 1,100 calls into the city properties that are agriculture. B1, 2, 3, 4, and C1, 4, and 7 are all City of Berea and City of Richmond commercial.
So you put them all together, you haven't separated Berea and Richmond?
And we never would because it's holistic. It's countywide.
I understand.
Now, we know.
I understand
We
that,
do
but
know.
one of the questions that I had from the meeting, and I should have put it in, but I didn't, was the allocation to the cities versus the county and making sure
So
that.
that's the EMA money. So that has to be a separate conversation.
Thank you.
So this will be just
Thank you.
the 911 funding. And I think we probably should have never had the EMA conversation at the task force.
Okay.
Because it just.
Cause confusion.
I's are the industrial inside the city. INS is institutional inside the cities,
It's only in Berea.
only in Berea.
Institutional is only in Berea.
Sorry, institutional in Berea. MP is mobile home parks inside the city. P1, I can't remember.
Oh, wait, hold on. The cheat sheet.
Special purpose
It took us like
districts.
3 hours to figure out everybody's codes.
You got PUDs. I'm just saying all this to see, here's residential 1A, 1B, 1C, 1T. You got all this, then you got the county down here and their UCs. So, who cares about all that, right?
So that, special purpose, Chris, that was a high volume of calls. What is that exactly?
Special purpose. Is this one?
Yeah.
That's public, semi-public for the city of Richmond. So that is like
Lake Riva, ball
like parks and government-owned-ish.
So the city's gonna build a $60 million park, and we're gonna increase that volume by.
So if there's an issue at Lake Riva and they have to windy pray,
Oh,
same
remember,
as
that's only
better.
1 point.
Yeah, but at Lake Riva and they have to call because 2 people are at church league softball and they get in a fight.
Especially church league.
Yeah, church league's the roughest.
Then that's where that geo locates to.
We did take business, the city break business and commercial down. We were really unable to decipher what the world of difference between a business and a commercial business is on their data. So we just combined it. So we see business as business that they claim as business or commercial, and then industrial we completely out. So you can see that 47.5% of the calls are falling inside of business. That's the Walmarts, the Lowe's, the Merle Normans of the world, all those places. I like to use Merle Normans.
I was getting ready to say, why did you use that? But I understand.
The hair supply. I think this tells the story, and it tells a little bit of what your point was, right? The data by the door that we used in the task force, there were assumptions made with any data set, right? Put 33,000 parcels in a single door. In Billy's data, it's probably not really great on the number of doors and not having zeros, so those assumptions were made they were ones, which then inflates that, right, which then gives us that imbalance. But obviously, moving forward, the way Kent County does it, I saw you looking at Kent County's policy. We have their GISP up there, wrote this 4-page document of exactly how they went through this whole process, and we've modeled it to do the same thing. You remove these kind of calls, you remove these, you put it in here, you bring it up, and then you're gonna say that the business track is gonna pay 47% of that $4.3 million. And then you decide what the fee is to collect whatever 47% of 4.3 million is. So if that's $25 a door or $100 a square foot to get that number, that's how you justify your cost. And like you said, it looked like the citizens were taking it on the teeth. And in that model, they are. We'll have a discussion around maybe a potentially better way to maybe attack it that is more, what's the term we used? More equitable to everybody. But this number right here tells the story. And this is how I believe you need to divide up that 4.3 million. The business and commercial needs to be paying 48%, but 47.5%. We didn't have that at the task force prior to.
Right. I understand.
Just getting the
So
data
what
together.
we do have, and what we've seen and looked at is, to me, is not fair. And that's what I'm basing whether I vote yea or nay. I mean, that's what
Yep.
I need to see that.
So I think what I need and what the group needs, at least from the county side, because as the cities have said, it's up to the counties at this point to decide how this baby goes. You're using the framework that the task force has spent the time on to develop. You're still doing it by land use category. You're still following their guide. You have the longitude to kind of manipulate this to where you guys feel it's more palatable, more fair, and better for you. We get to decide, right?
I like that, but I also want to make sure that at the end of the day, when this happens and goes forward, which, that we don't have neither city should come back on us and be negative towards what the county's done. They need to be a part of this.
Yeah, and I think the framework is there. You're gonna stick to the framework. Now, whether or not, nobody passed in the resolution that a door is $75 and the square footage, right? And even Mayor Blatch was on the record saying that it's really kind of up to the county to decide how this gets implemented. And it's how you guys best feel that it needs to be. And we've had conversations, it seems like every day we're talking about this. Somebody calls, what about this guy? He's got a $1,500 tax bill, but he's paying $3,000 in a 911 fee. That wasn't anything we didn't think about that in the task force, right? It was, you gotta have an answer by the end of February, and how do you get a number, and how do we do it? But boom, now we get to talk through this thing and be like, that doesn't work. One of the options that has been brought up is square footage above ground, and applying that across the board. And maybe you pay a different rate for square footage in a residential than you do a multifamily, than you do business commercial, than you do industrial. So that you can, because I think the actual KRS says that you have to be able to tie back how you calculated that fee and why you are bringing that money in. So you're charging 6 cents per square foot to business because you gotta collect 48% of that money, which is $2.7 million, right? And that's how we got to
I
it.
think going this direction becomes more in line of what, when you look at the dissent from the Supreme Court that said that this should be related, when you call it a fee, it should be a user. You're calling it a user fee. So it has to be somebody that's using this product.
Yep.
So
Sure.
in this case, then you are charging based on who's using it. And that
Now,
becomes a
unfortunately,
user fee.
You may be Mark Norman that never called 911,
Right.
and you're lumped right in there with Walmart.
Yeah.
I also live right next to Glen Marshall, and my kids can't go to Glen Marshall. So somebody always is gonna fall in that line, right? Somebody's gonna be unfair. But the big thing was 31 doors was capped at what, 38 or 40, something like that? The
31 plus.
2,700.
What was the doors though? It's like half that, so
The doors was 42.
42.
You had 42 parcels. It
We
was
got a
40.
brand new PUD going in at 500 doors up the street, don't we? And he's gonna pay $4,800, but the guy that owns 17 different pieces of property is gonna pay whatever the max was on those. Right now, that's where the inequity happens. We wanna try the square footage model. We've done a little bit of math and trying to figure out.
What is y'all's thoughts about the square footage model?
I like the aesthetics of this, but there's still one thing that you have to keep in mind. If you live in a multifamily, if it's businesses, the landlord of a multifamily building is not gonna pay that. Who's gonna pay that?
The tenant.
Who lives in that building's gonna pay that.
Who's gonna call
If you go into a
911?
business and you buy something, guess what? You're paying that. You ultimately, everybody sitting in this room is ultimately gonna pay that. So just to look at it on top and say, hey, well, single family's paying 50% of that, it's fantastic, everybody's happy with being slot. You're still paying it.
Yeah.
Yep, somebody gotta pay it.
Of how you break it down.
But in a multifamily situation, the tenant should pay it, the landowner should. Because they're not
Just saying,
calling.
it's
The
same.
landowner's
You
not
could
calling.
almost tie it back to a cell
Well,
phone,
and-
but you can't.
And even if you're in Walmart and you need that, make that 911 call, is it Walmart's fault you had a heart attack in Walmart?
Or you dinged the door and bumpered somebody in Walmart's parking lot.
Yep.
But on the surface, this looks a whole lot better.
But as a person who has a fixed income, they have a choice. They don't have to go to Walmart. They can go wherever.
Yeah, it's kind of, what was the term you used? Oh, now I can't think of the term. I was gonna sound really smart. Usage, it's based on usage, what's that term?
There what?
Usage.
That's
Usage.
at
Yeah,
the end of the
the
day, that's
term
what it's
we
about.
Consumption.
It's a
Consumption.
consumption-based fee. If you know you gotta pay a tax and you wanna buy the Lexus, then go, see, I didn't use Cadillac, Lexus.
Yeah.
Right, you choose to buy the Chevette because you know that the taxes are 6% or whatever. I mean, this is the same way. You don't have to shop at Kroger. You can shop at Walmart. You don't shop at Walmart, you can buy it. all
I mean,
you know, all you
if
know,
a business passes this cost on to their customers, then the customer has a choice not to shop there.
Yeah. Well, at a Walmart at $4,800, how much are they gonna raise the product?
Walmart doesn't care. It doesn't matter what you charge Walmart. They're paying their checks from
What
Bentonville,
did we say?
Arkansas.
What did we say? What do you have?
That's what you said.
Those means a little less than
No,
that.
I'm talking
You know,
about,
also-
I've done
The mom
math.
and pops would make a difference
I've
because
done
they're
math that,
figuring their prices are.
What is that right
In
there?
food
That's called law.
anyway, there's just minimum margin in that anyway. They've got to sell a lot of crap.
What was it,
Raise their price, then fix it.
125,000 square feet? What was Walmart?
Yeah, they're 125, over 125,000.
Do you remember what it was though
I
exactly?
got it right here.
263, I think. Somebody was 263.
We figured this, we did.
Walmart is 195,345 according to PDA.
So it's 200 square feet, 200,000.
Which, at 4 cents a square foot, would make them pay $7,800.
There you go.
And that's nothing. I mean, if
That's
I wanted to
nothing.
sell a product at Walmart, I would have to pay Walmart to put it on their shelf. I mean, Walmart's business model is
Right.
crazy.
So,
Generate money, right?
Yeah, I mean, they
So Steve-
charge you to put it on the shelf, and they charge you when they sell it.
so Steve Hendricks, I don't know if anybody knows Steve or not, but Steve's a Hendricks Roofing. He has a little warehouse here on the Hallie Irvin Street. He's got about 3,750 square feet. But his building is assessed at, I think like $170,000, which would be like 1,500 square, or probably $1,500 on his property tax bill is what he is. His total property tax bill is $1,500. But he would fall in this category that has been recommended. His 911 fee would be $1,200. It'd be almost what his property tax bill is, right? But if you took his same concept, you broke this down by square footage, and he's 3,750 feet times 4 equals. So he'd be $150,
This makes a lot more sense.
not $1,200. But at the same time, Walmart is not going to be $4,800. They're going to be whatever you said, $7,000 or whatever, $7,800. Right now, the same concept is that
Homeowner.
a duplex it's 1,000 square feet. A duplex that's 1,000 square feet. Again, it would be $40, not $75. But a 5,000 square foot house out in Boone's Trace or wherever would be greater, right? I mean, that's kind of the concept around the square footage.
I
The
look
difference
at-
in the square footage cost for commercial, which is a revenue generating operation versus a residential, which is non-revenue generating, would there be a different?
Yes.
Well, there
cost
could be.
structure?
There could be. We just did it
Yeah.
We just did it off 4 cents. I can't remember how we got to that 4 cents. I think I took the total number of parcels and the amount of money that we needed, and I broke it down of like
The average home size was
Yeah.
1,600 square feet. And
Yeah, I just based it off.
$72,
Yeah.
which puts you close to that number. Now, this model, 4 cents across, the data as it sits today only collects $2.4 million.
This
So it-
model only collects
So it can't
2.4.
be 4 cents flat.
Right.
Now, there were 7,000 records, was that right, that I looked this morning that had 0? Are they all just land? I don't think so, because there's some that say building, but it says 0 square footage. Now, Billy is committed to clean the data. The other thing that's good about this model is it gets the data accurate, because then people are gonna appeal and say, my house isn't 2,500 square feet, my house isn't this, right? Then they bring documentation to proof, and we continue to build this data set in PDA, which then, if it goes up, because you could screw up and come and it actually goes up from what it was, right, or it could go down. So it helps the tax base a little bit, but 2.4 million, 7,000 records that have 0. This is probably way more accurate than the door count that he was using, and that we had to kind of manipulate to get an answer. I think square footage is better. We talked about square foot of rooftop only. This is square footage of above ground, because what Billy was concerned about is that a 5,000 square foot ranch is gonna pay more than my 5,000 square foot 3-story. So just rooftop doesn't necessarily work. But he has, this square footage represents only the out of ground as it sits today. The 7,800 records that are zeroed out. So I think I said if you applied $25 flat fee to every 0, that was only another $300,000, so that doesn't. What you need to do is figure out, and this is where we'll have to go get in the weeds, 47% of that $4.3 million is $2.1 million or whatever it is. How do I get that out of that? What does the fee have to be to get that $2.3 million? And that's how you would calculate it. So businesses, maybe it's gotta be 7 cents, because that's how I get to my $2.whatever million. Well, single family, I only need to bring in 600,000, so the fee's only gotta be 3 cents. And that's how you tie it back to the KRS, so that it ties it back to use as a fee, and we're basing it off of there. The colleges and the institutions, Berea College, EKU, and all the schools account for 5,000 calls. Now, right now, this data, EKU, I guess grandfathered is the appropriate word, or whatever it may be, a lot of their properties exist in residential. So their calls are going into residential, they're not going into something else. Obviously, we can address that and fix it through GIS and put them in the right category if you wanted to, or you negotiate separate contracts with the 3 entities and take them out of the call volume and you charge them the flat fee. That's an option that's been discussed too.
Like,
Because
how
at
much
the
will
end
they
of the day-
generate? Like the schools, you know, even the Madison County school systems with all their schools and everything, how much will that generate to
Well,
the county?
based off this, we figured about $96,000.
Okay.
In total?
Based off of
If you divide their school.
Just the Madison County schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, just Madison
Now,
County?
We just took an average square, we looked at 3 schools and said,
We
yeah,
just
they're all
had-
basically.
We just said that if they were all average of 125,000 square feet, you know, which is gonna be fairly close.
Fairly
There were 22.
And we said there was 20 schools, I think.
And that accommodates
we did-
3,285.
We just did the 4,800 times 20, I think it's 96,000.
Have y'all talked to school officials, see how, about, I'm just, the only reason I'm asking is, are they gonna increase?
And don't
the
get ahead
tax?
of us either.
No, I won't, I promise.
Yeah,
I
because.
drive a Toyota, so.
Well, don't get ahead of us, because that's part of
Yeah.
what our strategy is with Berea College, EKU, our school system, is that I feel like that I, myself, need to go, our team needs to go and sit down with them, explain this to them, so just kind of get a feel of what is palatable to them, what they think is fair, right? I mean, so that is on our to-do list. Once we get a model that we all feel like that we can agree to and be able to put it in an ordinance, right?
But they should step up.
I'm not gonna go to them and show them this if we're not leaning towards this, right?
Yeah.
But they should step up.
Man, let's just say it's 100,000, we'll use that number. Is that gonna affect their budget? Is 100,000, what part of their budget? I mean, it's probably a very small amount. And is that gonna cause a tax increase on our school tax, on our tax bill alone too?
You can bet it's
You
gonna
know it's going
cause some
to.
crying and
That
wailing.
Yeah.
And nobody's, here's, and the worst
I know
part
it's
about
small.
it, nobody will say the first word about it. They raise their tax rate 1 penny, nobody will say jack about it. They've done it for years.
Talking about Madison County
Yeah.
schools.
And they can.
And the other 2 schools we're talking about got plenty of money. And I've seen the budget over at one of them before. They got plenty of stuff stuck here and there. So
They need to pay it, I mean.
50,000. Well, that's Madison County Schools. I'm not against them. Hell, my kids went there, but they're flush. I mean, look at the money coming in on the county.
Well,
Well, my kids didn't go, and I'm still paying the tax.
Yeah,
I'm-
absolutely. You know they got it, right?
I paid for my kids' education on my dime, and paid for everybody else.
Well, I started out that way at Model, then I figured out, duh.
But I'd do it again.
Nothing wrong with Model, but they got just as good education at Central.
yeah, he said a few.
How did you say?
Yeah.
Cheap. Oh, it was a lot
So-
cheaper, because I had two at one time.
So which this also kind of leads into, you know, how do you do parcels, right, that don't have square footage? You know, how do you, if we're gonna go kind of a square footage path, is how we're gonna be able to create our fee, then what do you do about,
farm with no
Sherry-
house?
what do you do about a Sherry Thiel? You know, Sherry reached out, and I had a great conversation with her, and she and her husband live on, let's just say it's 10 acres, but they also own another 7-acre tract that's separate, right? But it's a joint. It's two different parcels of land. You know, she said, well, am I going to have to pay 2 fees, right? Which she brings up a good point. It looks like one big piece of land, but it's actually 2 separate parcels. And the way that the task force recommended it, that you would have actually paid 2 $75 fees, right? But if I live on a 100-acre farm and it's one parcel, I'm only paying 75. She lives on 17 acres, but it's 2 parcels. She's paying 150. So that was another concern that some people had. So we said, okay, what do you make it if you live on a big parcel of land, but it's in multiple parcels, but it's contiguous? Then you just pay 1 fee. You know, I mean. But if we go a square footage route, what do you do about those parcels that have nobody lives on them, but it's a farm, right? That somebody is, you know, driving 4 miles down to farm it, and there's barns and there's activity and their potential 911 usage from that parcel because of somebody gets hurt or tractor turns over on somebody or whatever the case may be. You know, how do you handle those parcels?
It's just like, I'm glad you're going this direction because Jill's grandfather-in-law, he said he's got 3 tracts that he's accumulated over the years, so he gets 3 tax bills. You know, he didn't mind the 75, but income last Friday, he said, am I gonna have to pay that 3 times on, you know? And I said, that's a big question. It would have been a showstopper for me, you know, for him if he had to pay that 3 times on his.
Well, you don't need to worry about him. He's not in your district.
He called you and he didn't call me.
And I'll bet you
He
$1.
grew up in my district.
And I'll bet you his real estate taxes are not that damn high. That's the thing you got to remember. Agricultural land's not paying what you and I are paying. Well, not you, you're a farmer. What you're paying in residential. They don't go out there. They should be jacking up the agricultural land.
Oh, you better be careful what you talk about there, son. You're starting to meddle now, ain't you?
What? Just trying to be fair and equitable.
So,
That's a PVA situation. See, that's not mine.
I think we need to move to
Another discussion?
censor Mr.
This ain't
Longfield.
getting away from us.
so
We are still recorded.
I know we're recorded, but you know we can discuss different things. Doesn't mean it's going to happen because
This needs to
the
go to
whole-
YouTube. We're going to have to get the system, we're going to have to send tax bills to people we've never sent tax bills to before that aren't in the system.
yeah.
Churches and universities, and
Yeah.
I just want to say that so I don't forget it and we don't forget later.
Watch out, Kenny.
Yeah,
You talk
nonprofit.
about taxes.
It'd be-
Been ready going to get you.
Fees. I've never gotten a bill from us before.
So it sounds like to me,
Billy combined some parcels on his own tax bills, so he like sends 2 tax bills on one, and so we've already talked with him about that a little bit.
Well, he actually puts them in a.
What you're going to see too, though, is
But he's going to have to create that in the roll in order for the bills to print.
you're gonna see growth every year in the county, that you're gonna add more square footage. So you're gonna take in more revenue.
King County adjusts theirs every year by ordinance. They do this exercise every year and adjust the fee. It's been 76, it's down to like 72 now.
70. This
70
last year,
70 this
nothing
year, sorry.
different at all.
So they started out at 76, and they reduced, I know like Woodford County's like 50. It's, I mean,
What is
there's
Fiscal
so
County
many
on
different models
It
that are
used
out
to be
there.
4, I don't know what it is now. It's $4.
But I mean,
Like Garrett County, I think they do a water
We
meter.
do water bill over there.
It's water meter.
Four or
isn't it?
five.
Water, it's water meter, it's like $2.50 a month or something.
Yeah.
On their
That's
water
what
bill.
kind of does water.
And I think I wanna say theirs was 4 when mom and dad lived there, but they haven't lived there in a long time, so. And they didn't know they were even paying it, they were just paying it.
So
I was curious.
It seems to me like that, that it is palatable from the conversation I'm hearing from our members of the court, that you like the concept of the square footage.
Chase this trail out.
Yeah.
See where,
And so-
see where it outlines up.
So you all would like for us to take the single family, multifamily, ag, business, industrial, can you pull that up, Chris, a little better? So you would like us to take that right there and sort of put it into a dollar amount, a percents per year on square footage of those different entities?
I still think you gotta look at income producing square footage as a different animal than a non-income
Absolutely,
producing.
because 47% of that, to get 47% of that's gonna cost a whole lot more
Yeah,
per square foot to get to that number. So inherently, your plan should address that. I like that. One thing that Kent County does is public use is stricken from theirs. That might be something you consider, because that's parks, that's your buildings, that's EMS, that's those things. They remove those calls from their total.
But one thing that's not on there though, I think, is that I don't see is churches, is nonprofits.
Anybody got an address of a church?
Well,
I don't know what
they're not in the system. They're not on the road.
First Baptist, what we say is 525 Eastern Bypass.
They're not on tax roll, but they would be on 911 if there was a call.
Yeah.
Apparently you like Brady's.
401 West Main.
It shouldn't be in there.
Searching.
I was thinking about it. Yep, it's on there.
It is. Twice.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's not in the
Like your
category.
Hold on. I stuck it to a, somewhere.
Wherever they were zoned to.
Where's the zone? Come on. I'll
Oh,
stick it.
you-
Because it's all the map is a type
So
of
it'd
parcel
probably be-
zone. So if that zone is business,
It's probably under a business.
So somebody,
well, I can look. I can
somebody
look
brought
on
up
it.
the 6 or 7% of public use.
1 ALC.
How do you define that?
Yeah.
Is that all government entities, property?
I think it is. It'd be parks, schools. Well, I don't know if schools is on there,
Yeah, there's some data cleansing.
but like, our buildings, road departments, the jails.
Courtrooms,
Yeah.
Because it'll have to be defined, because the worst thing we can do is have too many exceptions.
Yeah.
There's the right exceptions,
Oh,
but then
there's-
everybody's gonna want an exception.
You're right, 425 Eastern Bypass, that's First Baptist.
It's close.
Remember, that's a B in.
Huh?
B in. It's in column B in. where the zone is.
Well, on the zoning map, it looks like it is, central business district.
So that would be in that 48,000.
They get Eastern Bypass when it's on Leeway Drive.
We don't either.
B2.
There's Leeway Drive, but they got it as.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, it's not on the bypass.
It's on.
It's not.
You can see the bypass.
Hey, it's on Magnolia.
It's B2, so it falls into that purple. That church does.
So what do you say, that was First Methodist, so it would be business.
Business. But it's actually not business.
But my point is to that right there, you're saying that you got it included in the 48,316, but my question is, should we have it broke out as nonprofits and churches, like nonprofits / church as a category?
That's the information I need to leave here with today, so that when we meet with Bill
What
on
about schools?
Thursday. we can
Schools
say-
is down in that educational entities, I think. Is the schools part of the 6831?
I don't know that, I don't know, if you could also look at those and see what was in that 6831, those public
We
use.
can always look at it.
We were gonna look and like,
So we
hey,
got an address of the school.
the addresses of what, or where those 6821 came from, like, look at those individually. And, cause that's what Wendy and her team did on
Years ago, there
the
were
school.
608 churches in Madison County. I don't know what it is today.
1442,
I'm sure it's a lot more now.
You got one?
1442, Dr. Robert R. Martin, it's not in there.
So then the 6,800 public uses then is what? What's,
I don't have to go
you
through
don't
and
know.
find out exactly what they are.
All right, so what do we need some action items here for this part of it? So members of the court, what would you all like to see in this topic? You want to see the breakdown of the cost? You want to see how much money it's going to generate? You want us to put together a spreadsheet that would give a cost? Is that-
Yeah, and here's a dream for me. If the average residential house hold cost was about $50.
Well, I think we Googled this the other day to say it was 1,600 square feet, right?
Yeah,
in Madison
Average,
County.
the average square foot of a residential house was 1,600.
yeah,
That would be $64.
At 4 cents.
At 4 cents.
okay.
So, and again,
Yeah.
we're just running numbers.
And that's 60, I could live with that, but I'm just saying, if it was $50, I think it'd be very palatable to.
You're probably gonna have to go lower, because you could only collect 15% of the 4 million from them, which I think was $600-something thousand.
So you're saying if my house is, let's just say 1,500 square feet or something, it's gonna be lower than the 75?
Yeah,
See, I was fine with the 75, so why not just?
well, a lot of people are with the
Well, a lot
75,
of
but
people are,
of
but
them not.
but again, it
We
makes
need to
it, you know,
find
you,
how many.
somebody
What's
lives in a
that?
single wide
How many
trailer,
are?
it's on a fixed income.
I mean, is it a handful? I've got a handful of people.
And
calling
people,
all
somebody
kinds of
lives in an
problems
apartment
on
building
this
that's 1,000 square
distillery,
feet.
but I've got 20,000, ain't saying a damn thing.
Well, you
Well,
live in a pretty
they're-
affluent.
Well, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, yeah, but you know.
75 would hurt
Like an
constituents of yours, I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
More than it would
I
maybe
mean,
somebody
I'm
need to go
thinking
run.
about the little guy.
I get it,
That's
but-
buried. He's going to the food bank to get groceries.
But he owns that or a renter.
Some of them
Somebody's
have
gotta live
little
there
old
somewhere.
houses that they lived
Trailers.
in, and yeah.
Man, heard it.
See, I thought it was just gonna be like.
I get it, I'm not-
$75, like-
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of poor people.
$75.
Yeah, I know, that's fine, I know, and I know.
Well, it was, I mean, that's what,
Change the dollar.
that, it was, you know, that's what was presented, right? But we're trying to figure out based on what feedback has been from constituents. Feedback from Dean Vincent on Facebook, right? I mean, feedback from folks, and we're listening and trying to say, okay, how can we make it better? Which has led us to this,
Pecking order.
saying that 47% of the calls are businesses. So why aren't they paying 47% of the
Calls
fee?
for service.
Calls for
I got you.
Right? Only 15% is coming from single family, so they should only be paying 15% of the fee. Like, this model is good, we just gotta bake, and if you then you put it in square footage, then each one of those categories could be 3 cents, Bill, right?
You know, a 1,200 square foot house would be $48.
Yeah.
Which is,
Generate.
We don't know what the rate's gonna be yet.
Until you try to get to that number.
but I just wanted to throw that out as a kind
It's gonna be
of,
hard to get your square.
that 4 cents sounds
Right.
reasonable.
Well, it's not.
PPA, I mean.
PBA should have it, right? Warren, PBA should.
But is it right? Is their data right?
I think their data's pretty accurate.
Really? Okay.
I mean, what
There's a question, it
what
wasn't
I've
a-
investigated, you know, they measure every corner, right? Now, where sometimes it could be getting skewed is if somebody has a finished basement, or PBA doesn't go in their house, right? So they're guessing sometimes that, like, if you live in a story and a half, they're guessing at the half story unless they can get blueprints and they put that information in.
Checks.
But I mean, they're pretty accurate on their numbers.
That's where that 100.
And of course now with technology, I mean, we got GIS, a fantastic GIS person.
102,000.
He can go in there and measure rooftops, right?
So, why, just so I can understand, I'm not against it or anything, why are we breaking out educational entities? They're part of this whole equation.
We didn't. I just want you to know that because these keep coming up, everybody wants them to pay their fair share. And we wanted to make sure you knew that of this 101,000 calls, 5,000 of them represent that.
So, but when we present it and
Some
look
people
at
say,
it, everything
all the calls are
needs,
at the schools.
everything, right. No, we have to have the data. I agree.
5,025 is inside the 6831?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Well, I don't know that, Judge. There are encompassed somewhere in that number. Which one, I don't know.
Oh, I got you.
Until I go back and pull all the data. Heck, they
You
may
just
not-
know it's in the all those add up to 101, and 525 is inside the 101. You just don't know which one they're in.
I will know.
Yeah.
So another
You
question
can do
is,
public use.
are we better off looking at this and presenting it
Yeah, that's how we came.
public use as a broad category, or breaking two or three of them out that makes up that public use?
I
When
think
presenting to the public so that they know where the dollars are.
so. I think that possibly. And it's all would be a conversation we would have to have with Brick College, EKU, Madison County School System, is that they could be sort of outliers that you have just like a flat fee agreement with, that they pay X, right? That they're not paying based off of square footage, right? That we somehow figure out what makes sense and what's fair for those three entities in their kind of separate agreement. Yeah. So our team here. So do you all feel like you all have some direction of what they're asking for, or do y'all have other questions for them? Like to make sure that we're capturing the information that they're looking for, so that when we all get back together, do y'all have anything, members of the court? Do y'all have any other suggestions or things that you all want to see that haven't been discussed today around this topic?
I guess guidance would be the public use. Kent County strikes public use from their totals altogether. So they would have taken their data and anything that ended in a public use building those 6,000 calls wouldn't be there. They would take them off.
Well, it has to be, but the definition of public use, or whose definition?
I believe they're talking about publicly owned schools, EMS, fire, police stations, those parks, that kind of stuff. Because you can't really tie that to an entity to pay, who's paying that, because they're already paying. But if the schools are landing up into that public use and we're doing a general agreement, then they can just come off, right? And it really, at the end of the day, 6% is not the largest portion of that 4.3 million anyways.
So this is me personally, if we're not planning on charging an entity, then I don't think they need to be included in this.
Okay. That would,
So if it's Richmond, I mean, it's my understanding that Richmond, Berea, Madison County would not be paying any kind of fee.
correct.
I mean, for our facilities, right?
Yep. And I
So
think
they
we're
would
looking at
not
the
be
schools.
needed to be included in this. But now if schools at Eastern and Berea are, then I think you could just say universities and schools, right? As instead of public use.
Berea has an INS district, which is an instructional district. I mean, they've broken it out in their zoning, so we know where theirs are. And I think we included it in public use. I'll know exactly what this public use is, and based on what we talked about, make an educated decision of whether it should be or not. I really like the idea of the three entities just paying a flat fee and then reducing that off to 4.3 million to get whatever millions to figure out your percentage. And go that way. Don't know if they're doing for that, I'll try though.
All right, so any other questions on that topic? I want to talk a little bit about timeline.
I'm good.
Only thing maybe that would go along with that topic is there going to be an appeal process?
Yes.
So there is going to be a process where people can say, you're charging me for X
Now,
amount of square foot, that's not what I've got.
You're reading the Kent County one too. Kenton County allows you, if you have a vacant property to appeal by a certain date to exclude them from your door count. But we're not gonna do doors, but I don't think we wanna go down that road. But there will be an appeal process of, you said my house is 2,600 square feet, I got plans that says it's 2,400.
So I think your question kind of goes in this timeline that I want to talk about, right? And this, nothing set in stone, right? It's just conversation here, just brainstorming with you all, okay? The recommendation, we're on time and on track with what the recommendation is by the task force, right? I mean, so technically, if we stay on time of what their recommendation was, then we would actually have a first reading at our next fiscal court meeting, which is next Tuesday, right? Which I'll just say is not going to happen. All right, I'm not ready. I don't think we're ready. We got to draft the ordinance. We got to find all this information out. All right, but also the recommendation of the task force is this would be on the 2024 tax bill. I'll just tell you how I feel about that. I'm not in favor of that, and I'll give you reasons why. One is that we don't need the fee till 2025. If we put it on 2024's tax bill, then that means that we should need the fee this year, and we don't. We have CSEP funding. Worst case scenario, in my opinion, worst case scenario is that CSEP funding runs out in June of 2025. So that gets us through this next fiscal year that we're getting ready to present a budget to you all on and get it approved and start July 1, right? So then it would go on 2025 tax bill, which a tax bill is in arrears, right? It's for that year it's in. So my recommendation to us is that if CSEP funding goes away in basically July 1 of 2025, the fiscal court would pay the 911 monthly fees up until we got the revenue coming in off the tax season in October, November, December, and then we would pay ourselves back. All right? So that's kind of where my head is. Along that same process, I feel like 2025 is also better because we are giving our citizens, our businesses, all the people on that list, a year and let's say a half heads up in preparing whatever they need to do to be able to pay whatever the fee is and whatever the structure is. They got leases with their tenants. Within a year and a half, they're going to have new leases, right? They're going to offset it. A Walmart, a business, a whoever it is, well, I got this extra fee coming. I'm going to increase the price of my product, or whatever the case may be. Somebody might say, well, I'm not going to pass it along to my customers because it's not that big a deal, right? The people that are on fixed income, they have an opportunity time to prepare to save up some extra dollars because they're going to have a little bit extra fee, whatever the case may be. So I think when we would have a PR strategy, which goes towards your question you asked there a minute ago, I think, about how we communicate this to the citizens. You know, my sort of thoughts have been, you send out a letter as soon as we pass our ordinance here in the next month and a half. We've gotten all this information, we got it all worked out. We pass our ordinance. I think we send out a letter to every parcel owner, every business owner, explaining to them that, hey, we just want to give you a heads up. Whatever the information says, right? Short and sweet to the point, preparing them for that. We've actually had conversations with Billy about an appeal process. We send out letters once you get all that information in, and starting in January, from January and February, you can, based on the information, that's what we have you have an opportunity to come in and challenge that if it's not accurate or it's not correct. And that would be, January, February. And these are it's just brainstorming. There's nothing set in stone here. But the concept would be that you would have that opportunity as a citizen or a business owner to come in and challenge whatever information that has been inputted in based on this criteria. Of course, then you wouldn't get that tax bill until Well, if you want to get the 2% discount, you're gonna pay before November 1st, right, Sheriff? So if you want to get the 2% discount, you're gonna pay before, and if you want to pay face value, then you pay November, December.
I'm digging what you're shoveling there, Judge.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, I think you're right on.
Chris, would there be a way, once you all get your numbers set, like of what you want on, to create this database that you have of all the addresses, and let's say somebody were to go on your all's website, punch in their address and say, this is what I'm going to have to pay. Would that be possible?
Absolutely.
That would be a good, public relations type thing to, they can go in, just punch in and see what they need, without having to send mailers out, because mailers would be really expensive in the whole county, wouldn't it? I mean, to send them
About
there.
$18,000.
So why not put it on a website where you could do it for free and they can
I think
just
it's
punch in?
both. I mean,
Because you
that's
can't make
transparency.
citizens happy, no matter what you do.
You're right.
You can't make money on it.
And so you send letters, you put it on the internet, you put it on Facebook, you put it on everywhere,
Yeah.
right? Because you're never gonna make them happy.
18,000?
It'd be $18,000 well spent.
I think that's cheap. I think it's higher.
Gee, we could drive.
Okay, so
It was 20-some thousand weeks ago.
what other comments? Our team, y'all have any comments that you wanna add to that? I wanna read these questions that I've had from citizens that we kinda wrote down, just to bring up other talking points in case there needs to be some. One citizen said each parcel should pay. So you'll have a contradiction to that sometimes. So one citizen said each parcel should pay, no matter if there's a house on it or whatever. And his example was that if I own an empty lot, or somebody owns an empty lot, and there's a homeless person living on it, and they have, then that person should pay. So that was one person's opinion. Fees are going to be as much as entire property tax bill. So that was a concern with the proposal here, which I think we're kind of addressing that in this. What about units over 31 doors? So some people have that are landowners, apartment owners, or landlords have said, well, I'm kind of getting punished because I've got more than 31 units, but they're not all in one parcel, so I'm having to pay more than somebody that's got over 31 units that's all in the same parcel, which again goes back to the square footage. I think you're fixing that, right? You're not giving anybody any kind of, you're not picking winners and losers there, right? Everybody's paying the same fee based on square footage. So if you own 200 apartment units that are 1,000 square feet, you're going to pay the same as the person that owns 10, right?
Back on that parcel business, that guy, if a guy bought half a dozen lots, that's 6, but if you got, Kenneth Richardson's got 3 deeds, 3 tax bills that he's had over a period of years, that's a different kind of parcel in my mind.
Well, and I think contiguous.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, it should be contiguous, right? If I live there and I own parcels that are contiguous to where I live, that should be one. Now, this is getting way into the weeds, but I think it's the way we got to think about it. So one of you all made a good in that meeting. You made a good statement of if you make exceptions, then you got to make exceptions for everyone, right? So my thought on that is hey, you don't make exceptions, but you allow certain situations to be able to be appealed. Right, so let's say that Kenneth Richardson, for instance, we say that an empty parcel is going to have a $50 fee. I'm just making things up. But if he's got 2 parcels that's contiguous to his piece, then he would have to pay $100. Well, he could go through the appeal process and say, no, you don't have to pay that because it's contiguous to what I'm paying right here. Right? Now, what would then flip the switch would be is if he ever sold that, somebody got a building permit, right? So then at that point, he would never have to pay it as long as it stays empty parcels contiguous to his land and he hadn't sold it to somebody else. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just the thought process there. Let's see, what about units of many doors divided into lots of parcels? I don't understand this question. What about units of many doors divided into lots of I think that was the scenario that I think you gave about one of your constituents down there. It was about, I got 30 units and they're on 4 different parcels. Yeah.
Now, one thing that, like on that, when you're considering the parcels, and we had a conversation where, you know, a landowner may raise $10 a month rent, and there maybe with the old, what we were talking about before, you know, the actual cost may just be $6, so they're going to profit for it. But they're not going to just raise rent on 31. They're going to raise rent on how many they got, so they're going to have a windfall. And I don't think that's an unintended consequence of having a cutoff at 31. I mean, I would much rather say every door counts, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Because they're going to raise the rent on, if they've got 100, they're going to raise the rent on 100. They're not going to stop at the break.
That's
Say,
right.
all right, we're going to just raise them on these few, and everybody else can
Which
slide.
is why I love the square footage.
Absolutely.
I mean, it goes back to, it don't matter how many units you got, everybody's paying the same fee, right? And you're splitting it out. And we all know that landlords are gonna make some money on this. I think they are. Now, they'll
We'll go
argue-
through their head.
They'll argue with you. They'll argue with you and say they're not, but, you know, what is it?
We had something pop up there.
Education category, I think we've talked that one. We've got that one. Y'all agree on the education category? Empty parcels adjacent to primary residence. We talked about that one. Parcels with no activity. So this is one of those. And again, I don't know the answer to it, but this did come up. Parcels with no activity. So, you know, somebody goes and develops a subdivision, and you've got a bunch of empty lots in there that don't have houses on yet. You know, do you charge for that parcel? Do you charge for that? Do you not? Do you, as soon as the building permits?
Somebody's
being-
mowing it, they could turn over the mower and get hurt, and you have to go get it, so.
Theft of equipment for the
Yeah.
builders, there's all kinds of.
Yeah.
And they're eventually going to build on it.
Bingo.
Somebody's going to be there.
Somebody's gonna be
But what I'm saying is but does that lot, when the lot becomes a lot and it's deeded, does that trigger the fee, or does the building permit trigger the fee? Because once you get a building permit, then you know there's activity, right? Because you're going to have footers, you're going to have foundations, you're going to have framers, you're going to have whatever. You are right in a development that you're going to have occasionally, if you got an empty lot, you're going to have a bush hog that drives over it to keep the mowing down, right?
And
If
if
you
you
go by a square footage model, how do you charge on a lot anyway? 'Cause there's no-
Well, I think you would have, I think what you would have is you would have a parcel fee, flat fee for an empty parcel, right? That
Just like you would with a farm.
that a farm or whatever it would be. I mean, you'd have to figure out what that is, but you know, you would have your square footage breakdown of each different category, but then you would have a empty parcel fee. And I think at that point, you'd be getting into where it's so minimal that you just probably have a flat fee of some kind, right? I mean, I would think, but I don't know that until we dive into the numbers.
Judge, what about the location we went to yesterday where you call it green space, you can't build on it, somebody's got to own it? Are they gonna be paying for that?
You know, that's a good question, Sheriff. I don't know how that's laid out parcel wise. If that's, I'll look it up right here. Let's see if I can find it.
You know, there's certain subdivisions that you just can't build on land.
So that is so actually that is a parcel, Sheriff. That it says that it is owned by Turnberry Partners LLC. So, and so that would have all been green space.
Make a line item for green space.
So Hampton Ridge Maintenance, so Hampton Ridge, so they have a piece that's owned by Hampton Ridge Maintenance Association, Inc. So that property owners association owns that, which means that property owners association would get a partial bill, right? They would get a bill And they're probably paying, well, they could be a nonprofit.
Damn, now I got to pay twice.
So yeah, they're a nonprofit, so they're not getting a tax bill on that because they're probably a nonprofit. But they would get a fee for that parcel. So yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I mean that I think you would have a category again of parcels.
Well, somebody would need to pay for it, because it's not right for the landowner. You have a couple of houses that you own that you rent, you're gonna be paying.
But like that green space,
The green space is contiguous to my backyard though.
Yeah, it's right out in your.
It's right there. I live right in the back of it.
yeah.
I'm just saying, I mean, if you're gonna give contiguous, then they're gonna.
But you don't own it.
But you don't own
I
it.
do not own it.
Yeah.
You don't own it.
Common
Your-
ownership's
Your subdivision association owns it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the Turnberry Partners over, you know, that's all part of the city's subdivision regs, right? They require so much green space. So like over there at Ash Park, they actually have a gazebo. They got a walking trail. So again, that association or whoever that's set up under would get that bill based on
So it's only contiguous if you own
if you own it. Yeah,
But you still
Well,
have
we're not gonna
the high
sign it,
potential
you
of
just-
911 calls.
it.
absolutely.
Not for me.
All right, so this was interesting. This one was a question. This will be from my little Angry Bird buddy over here. And if anybody on the record needs to know who Angry Bird is, that's our county clerk, Kenny Barger. Can you put the fee on car tags? That was a question from a constituent.
No, I don't think there's anything in statute
I don't know.
Statute explains what we can and can't put the fee on them.
Yeah. That's not one of the ones, that's not one of the methods that has been pushed through the Kentucky Supreme Court. That'll be my answer.
Okay.
It's not been proven, and
Not
our
been
advice,
proven.
and our advice from legal counsel at a state level was, when you go forward with this and for the state 911 board, was if you're going to do this, there are methods that have been proven successfully and audited successfully.
Don't get too damn creative.
There's already too many lines.
Good advice.
So
Car fee, car tag.
How do you relate the 911 calls with car? Yeah.
Yeah.
there's a lot of accidents.
True.
Kenny doesn't have enough line items.
So
on
how
his
many we
bills
had?
anymore to do.
I'm just getting. It was 96,000.
96, I think.
Isn't it? Yeah, 96,000. All right, so if you just took the 4.3 million divided by 96,000 tagged vehicles / boats. All right, that's what he.
That's,
I think
that's everything. Yeah, every vehicle.
Yeah.
Motorcycle.
So
boat,
that would be $44.79 per boat vehicle.
per vehicle.
It would make it more expensive for me if I had multiple vehicles.
Well, you need to sell them.
It's
I mean,
right.
you know, I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
yeah.
think it's.
No, we need to stay with the proven
Brought that
idea.
idea.
Yeah. Next one.
Well, I don't. Well, actually, I do. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was a constituent. It was a citizen that said that. It was worth the reaction of everybody. Really. Is the 911 budget available for me to look at? Of course it is.
We've already said that to them.
Everybody, it's online. Right, our budgets are online. Now, whether you understand them or read them, then if you can't understand it and read it, then you can call my office and we'd be glad to sit down. I absolutely love the budget conversations with citizens. So, anybody that, anybody else? All right, also, is this considered a tax increase on property bills?
It's not based on the percentage of the value.
We asked that too already.
So, now, we all know perception's reality, right? And everybody's going, it's a tax. I mean, and you got other elected officials out there that's saying, publicly, that is the only no vote of all the Berea Council or the City of Richmond.
Politicking, they're politicking.
So, let's see. I have been told that ambulance tax creates a surplus for the ambulance department. Is this true? Now, I'm sure that there's a little bit of a surplus every year. I mean, there's going to be, right? But I don't know what it is. Anybody?
You wouldn't find it because it'd be a budget that would absorb it.
It's probably a couple of million.
They've got, and Jimmy said in the past, I've heard him say that that, you know, library, tornado hits the library, you can build a library back over the next couple of years and raise the money. Ambulance, you gotta have back tomorrow. So they have the money in the bank to redo it.
But I have to say that, I mean, again,
You're talking about a taxing district.
you have a citizenry that doesn't, you have a citizenry that expects yearly raises. They expect yearly raises. But you also have that same citizenry that doesn't allow government to get a raise. They don't.
Yep.
So as taxing districts or as a taxing authority like us, a fiscal court, I think you have to have a little bit of surplus. You know, the citizens' mindset has kind of made us have to think about, hey, having a little bit of surplus, because they don't want, they don't trust government, right? And as much as you try to give them the facts and share the facts with them, and to Billy Ray's point, there's, you know, the citizen has their facts and we have our facts, right? What's truly factual. I'm gonna lean on what I know about government more so than I'm gonna lean on the citizen though.
I'm going through one of those situations right now.
I don't want it to be a money-making effort. I think that if it
No, I
turns
agree.
out that we generated X number of dollars in surplus, then the next year we figure out how
We lower
to
the fee.
adjust that rate to account for it.
And
It'll
I think
be- it'll all
EMS,
pay for whatever that service is, and that's it.
I think EMS does that on their tax rate, like if they have a surplus of money or whatever their budget is, they adjust it in their rate a little bit.
Well, they don't
I think they
adjust,
report to you all about it.
they don't adjust in a rate, they just take the compensating rate.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, for an entity like EMS, they're getting a little bit of an increase every year, you know, so.
Can't compete with it.
How much money will the $75 per property owner bring in? And as usual, not everyone is paying for 911 service, but receiving the benefit of it. Somebody explain that
I
question a
think
little
we've
bit.
addressed,
Yeah, I think
we
that's
addressed
been
that,
addressed.
it would be $4.3 million that, in revenue that we created from the land use fee was what was proposed in the task force presentation, and that it was not equitable right now, because not everyone is paying for the use of 911. Landline, people are
Fees.
paying for it, and others are not. So they were making a statement, I think, that it's not currently equitable.
Oh, they're saying right now, not everybody's paying for it, but what
And this is how I interpreted the
what
question
we've
that we
all
got
designed
through
here, then
email.
everybody is
Which I've already
paying for
responded to them all. so.
Everybody would be paying
Which
for
you
it.
did a wonderful job, I gotta say.
Yeah, I probably responded to all these questions. I'm sorry. I didn't know you could read them.
Well, no, I felt like it needed,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this meeting was about, was to bring up
Yeah.
to discussion points and hear what people are saying, right? Because I've heard from others, just 50,000 foot view, that there's a lot of people mad about this. There's a lot of people mad, but we haven't had a lot. I mean,
Don't have
we,
zero.
we have not. I mean, and the Tax Watch group is on this. It's just not. So
They're running it all on Hogwash Taylor anyway.
yeah, I'll take it. I'm used to it. I'm used to it.
Sorry, use of the hashtag.
And then, of course, are the task force meetings recorded so I can watch online? Of course, that answers yes. All right, what else?
No, it's
not.
actually not.
Huh?
That would actually be a no.
She asked a bunch of questions.
The task force
Task
versus
force.
this meeting.
Oh, the task
Yeah.
force.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had our joint task
Yeah.
force meeting.
I explained
You're
that.
saying your all's meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
That's the
work
task
group.
force, so.
Yeah,
I
I'm
was,
sorry. I didn't.
only other thing I would have, and Wendy and Jill and Chris may step in it, when you all do take this to court, and if you do pass it at the time of the second reading, at that time, would you implement the new board that we brought up in the task force to taking over at that time? Because both other entities has said this is gonna be a county thing. So the reason I'm saying that, go ahead and and put that board into effect. That way the previous board doesn't take something away. Did I say that right, Chris?
You've got a board with authority
Yep.
today that could potentially,
Well,
yeah, we discuss authority, but.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate here. Is that I think it depends on how you read the bylaws. I'm gonna call them bylaws and 911. I would argue that that board that exists today does not have the authority that they think they have, and they've been running and operating in a way for many years that I would say that I don't know that really goes along with the bylaws. But the way I figured that we would work this out would be with Wendy and what she feels comfortable with and the timing of it. You know, I thought in my mind, if we put this on a 2025 tax bill, that all this setup and structure would definitely be in place by July 1 of 2025. And that would give us as a group and an entity of Wendy time to set it up, structure it the way that we all want it to be structured. So I don't care, me personally, whether that goes into effect July 1 of 2024 or doesn't go into effect till July 1st of 2025 or somewhere in between. I think that'd be at the pleasure of our team and our directors that are sort of making those decisions. You know, there's another piece of this that we haven't really talked about because it's not that big of a deal, is the EMA piece, right? It's a totally separate piece. And how people got all that confused, I don't know, but two different things. But I think by July 1, again, of 2025, that EMA piece would be, it would all be fixed and all set to place, because that's really when it's kicked off, right? Because that's when your new budgets are going to have figured in the fee and everything starts, right? But if it starts before that, I don't have a problem with it as long as everybody else does.
What's the temperature in the room? Are they afraid, worried, scared?
Well, and
I'm sorry.
The employees. I mean, is that a year and a half they've got to go, what's going to happen? I mean, we can tell them.
Well, I mean, I don't know, my big thing to the employees was when I was asked what that would mean being a county department, at the end of the day for the employee, it's really not a lot different because we run under the county's admin code. We're paid by the county. And they still answer to me. I'm their department head, and if I have a question and it's HR related, I go to the county. So for them, that part doesn't change. Like procedurally, the board has the authority to make decisions on protocols and different things like that. And I think going forward, they would still give the same advice they're giving now, because everything they do is for the good overall. I mean, I don't think they would try to manipulate a policy or anything like that, because we're bound by ARS for most of them. For Wendy personally, it's a matter of, do I work for 9 people on a board, or am I under a county department with a judge and a fiscal court? So that's just kind of, and that's been Wendy's dilemma since 2008 when she came on board. So that's just, so one more year, is that really a big difference when you've been doing it for 15 or 16?
I love the third person.
Well, and
Wendy.
and again,
and that's how you do. I mean, it's just.
And again, I'm gonna go with your direction, your advice, and what you want me to do. I mean, I have ever since I started, I've considered you one of mine, right? I mean, even though I know there's a little different thing over there, you know, you've always been part of our team, and I don't think that, for me, it's not going to change. But I'll just take your direction on how you want that to work, and if you want it sooner rather than later. Yeah. The only thing that I would have in my mind, or an opinion of, is that I just don't want to implement it until it's time. It's like ready to go, right? That we have all the rules and regulations and everything that's going to, so everybody understands, right? So that's it. That's all I have.
With this 25, when this goes into real life, is that going to be a separate bill go out, or will it be on the tax bill itself?
Be on the
Will it
tax
be
bill.
a different item on the tax bill?
It'll be the way I understand it, Sheriff, is it would be a 911 fee.
think it's supposed to state Brea, Richmond, Madison County 911 fee.
Yeah, because we got watershed, you got library, you got.
You'd have another one, yeah. And you would collect that as the sheriff. You would collect it. You would get whatever the fee is as the sheriff's department for the collection of it. And then you would actually write the check to the 911 fund, right? It wouldn't be the general fund. It's specific in law that there'd be a separate fund. You'd have a 911 fund.
It's
just like you write it to the library, you'd write it to the 911 fund, and so that way that money is directed, deposited into that account. Now, county's administering it, and going back to some of the extra funds that you have in there that there would probably be some investment funds for that money because that's included in your all's mathematical equation of I think an average of a 3% increase on that money, so that you would have that money in 15 years or whatever. So.
I don't know if it can be encompassed into it, but when the tax bills go out for 2024 this year, I don't know if there's any way that you could put 2025 be a new line item for 911.
Yeah.
Put the category on there, but put the dollar amount
Zero.
zero.
Because everybody's going to be getting them, and some people have their mortgages through banks,
Yeah.
and they don't even get their tax bill. It goes to the mortgage company.
Put the category and zero it out.
Yeah. So that would give them a little heads up.
Yeah, it's another way to know it's coming.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Put coming soon
What,
instead of.
what is the fee? What is the fee? I didn't know there was gonna be a fee,
What do you mean a fee?
a commission.
Well, it's just like any of these
You get
fees.
1% of the total value of the bill,
You
or
get-
whatever your fee is.
1.5.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying.
Well, we give
I didn't-
1.5 for school.
Right.
Yeah, he gets 4%.
4%.
Right, I didn't know there would be any commission on the.
So would that be a reduction in our budget for the sheriff's office?
Yeah, I mean, if he gets a fee for it.
Cut me already.
But that's been figured in, though, right?
Sometimes you gotta-
His fee
Whose
has,
name's on these tax
That's what I was
bills?
wondering.
I thought I saw somewhere where it allowed for that.
That's your county administration 1% of the budget. That you saw. We're charging today 1% to manage the budget.
I thought y'all had figured that in on the revenue, though, in the tax code.
$72,000 is what it ended up being.
And I know from in Kenton, talking to Gabe, their clerk, if the fee is not paid, it leaves, it doesn't come to us. The county collects it. I don't have any problem with continuing to collect it, but that leads to the next question is, when those bills come over today, there are liens filed and a whole process that goes along with delinquent tax that this fee is gonna have nothing to do with. So,
It'd be the same as now if they go delinquent.
yeah, but the lien would be filed on the property based on the tax, not the fee.
Right.
'Cause that fee is just like a sidecar. It really isn't part of the taxes. I don't know. And we could cross this bridge when we get to it. Somebody doesn't pay that fee.
Well, so if somebody
If they don't pay that fee,
That's what it happens in
it's
all
on,
other counties.
it's
I was
gonna be on
gonna
the
say, we ought to
honor.
be able to learn from them.
Well, it's gonna be on the honor system, basically. What happens if they don't pay it?
It'd be,
On
it'd be
the other,
several that won't
in the
pay.
other
Yeah.
counties that I've looked at, in their processes, like sheriff's office collects it, the ones that are not paid, that percentage are not paid, they send out something in the county attorney and and it is paid to the county, not part of the delinquent process.
Okay.
And so there's like a process that they have written out of what they do.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we're gonna collect the fee on whether somebody pays it or not. I mean, that'll be part of, I guess, our ordinance that says what we do if somebody doesn't pay it, right?
Right.
Now, I'm more concerned about people that aren't used to getting a tax bill, the nonprofits, churches, those kinds of folks that are, which is why I think we gotta do, and we might have to exclude them, we might have to send them an actual bill. I don't know how we're gonna work that out, but your point is good, Kenny. I mean, there are some nuances there
Yeah,
that we're gonna have to figure out.
Because there could be somebody that comes to the sheriff's department and says, I'm paying my taxes, but I'm not paying that 911 fee.
Well, and there's a lot of
What are they gonna do then?
there's a lot of people there's also a lot of people with farm exemptions that don't get a tax bill,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it falls under the amount. Isn't that correct? There's some people that don't get a tax bill because it falls under the amount that,
I don't know what that number is, but yeah, it's not worth collecting. It costs more to collect than what the amount is.
and so you wouldn't want somebody that doesn't pay a tax bill to get delinquent, and their tax bill gets sold because of the 911 fee. Right?
See, but that fee,
It's not considered
it
that.
doesn't go into that.
Right.
It never goes to the tax bill. It stops. The tax bills would come to me, and the fee would go
Yeah.
collection
If,
to you all.
if I pay $1,000 in property taxes and I got a $75 fee, then I should pay $1,075.
Right.
But if I go and say I'm not paying that, I'd only pay $1,000, and
Because it's a fee and not a
then
tax.
the county is going to have to chase me down to get the $75.
Right.
Put a
And
lien
that's
on
what
my
y'all got to
property.
decide what the
that
teeth are. And I don't
process
know
is.
legally what that. I'm sure it's written out somewhere. KRS what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
I would say it probably wouldn't be much different than anything else you could. If
Well, I
somebody
don't want
came
to get
in
confusing later, and
The
then it
sheriff's office
gets all
said,
tangled up.
Pay for a concealed weapons license, they said, well, we'll pay the state police, but we're not giving the sheriff his fee if they're not gonna get their license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's gonna call 911, so they don't send anybody to the house.
Yeah, don't answer this. Don't answer this address.
Have a default.
You can black out parcels.
All right, what else? What else? Is there any other discussion? I know it's been a really good conversation. We've been at this almost 3 hours.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a second. All right, our next meeting will be April the 23rd, next Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. in Richmond. Call the roll, please.
Master Lockmuller.
Yes.
Master Hughes.
Yes.
Master Baca.
Yes.
Master Combs.
Yes.
Judge Taylor.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you can turn it off.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Before you
yeah.
stop.